Good evening, and welcome back to Boring History for Sleep. As you settle into your bed tonight, let your thoughts drift upward, toward the endless night sky that has watched over humankind since the very beginning. Long before cities rose, before writing or kingdoms, people lay beneath these same stars, wondering what they meant. The sky was not just decoration, it was mystery, order, and quiet comfort. When the sun disappeared, the stars offered something constant. Patterns slowly appeared, forming what we now call constellations. But to those early observers, they were more than patterns. They were companions, gentle reminders that time itself moved in rhythm. Astronomy, you could say, was born not in laboratories, but in still fields under open skies, when people simply looked up and listened to the universe. Before we go deeper into this story, how are you tonight? Are you listening from a quiet room, maybe already half asleep? Or perhaps you're tuning in from another part of the world. What time is it there, I wonder? Wherever you are, I hope this small moment feels peaceful. If you enjoy these calm journeys through forgotten chapters of history, I'd love for you to support this quiet space by liking the video, subscribing, and gently tapping the bell icon so you can return next time when another story unfolds softly. For now, let's continue our slow walk through time, under the same ancient sky. Imagine, thousands of years ago, a small group of people gathered by the fire after sunset. The air is cool, the earth smells faintly of dust, and above them, the sky opens like a vast curtain of light. No city lights, no noise, just darkness and stars. Each flicker above holds meaning. They may not have known the science, but they sensed a design. They noticed that certain stars appeared only in specific seasons. They began to connect those patterns with events on Earth, the rains, the migrations, the planting of seeds. This quiet act of observation became one of humanity's first sciences, a science born not from ambition, but from wonder. As centuries passed, different peoples across the world began mapping what they saw. They traced the paths of the moon and noticed how it changed shape night after night. The slow journey from crescent to full, and back again, became a rhythm that guided their days. When you think about it, this was their calendar, a calendar written across the heavens. The stars, the sun, the moon, all moving with precision that no human hand could control. They learned that the sky could tell time, not in seconds, but in seasons. Night after night, they found comfort in repetition. The stars always returned, right where they were meant to be. This gave people a sense of order in a world that was often unpredictable. Storms would come and go. Crops might fail, rivers might flood, but the stars remained steady. They were reminders that somewhere beyond human troubles, there was consistency, something larger, something beautifully arranged by the will of the Almighty. For early people, that realization was deeply calming. Without tools or telescopes, they still measured the heavens. They built small markers of stone, or placed sticks in the ground to track the shadow of the sun. Day by day, they saw patterns forming, and began to predict when the sun would rise in a certain place, or when the moon would disappear from the sky. These weren't acts of worship, they were acts of learning. To understand the world was to live in harmony with it. Through the movements above, they found ways to prepare for rain, harvest, and travel. The heavens became a teacher, one that spoke through light. Now, imagine standing alone in that ancient darkness. There are no clocks, no screens, no background hum of machines. Just silence, and the slow turning of the earth beneath the stars. For our ancestors, this was the world's most natural classroom. Each point of light carried lessons, not in words, but in rhythm. They noticed how the same stars rose in the east and vanished in the west, following a steady path. This gave rise to direction, to the first sense of east and west, north and south. The sky became a map long before maps were drawn on paper. Sometimes they gathered in groups to watch the night sky together. Elders would tell the younger ones what to look for, how a certain bright star might signal the coming of winter, or how the moon's curve could tell when it was time to rest the fields. In these moments, knowledge was not written but spoken, passed gently from voice to voice. It was a tradition of observation and patience. To look up was to remember your place in creation, small but meaningful. And so, even without knowing the word astronomy, early people practiced it every night. There's something deeply human about that shared gaze upward, across deserts, forests, and coastlines. People who never met one another still followed the same stars. It connected them without words, across distance and time. One could almost imagine a silent unity between early humans, all turning their eyes toward the same heavens, guided by the same Creator's design. This quiet wonder, this search for understanding, would one day shape entire civilizations. But at its heart, it all began with something very simple, the desire to know what shines above us. And as we pause here, at the edge of the ancient world, let's take a breath together. Feel how calm the thought of that sky can be. The same stars that guided them still hang above you tonight. They have witnessed countless lives, countless stories, yet they remain unchanged. Perhaps that's why this topic feels so peaceful, because astronomy began not as noise or conquest, but as quiet observation. A moment to look up and remember that we are part of something vast and perfectly ordered. Over time, as small communities grew into villages and towns, the practice of watching the sky became more organized. Certain people began to specialize in it, not as fortune tellers, but as careful observers. They would note the position of stars, the length of shadows, the timing of the moon's rise. Their observations helped plan harvests and prepare for journeys. In a world without written calendars, these skywatchers became keepers of time. They were respected, not for power, but for patience, for their ability to read the quiet signs of the heavens. In some regions, large stones were placed to mark where the sun would rise on special days of the year. These markers were simple yet brilliant, aligning perfectly with the sunrise during certain seasons. People would gather when the first light broke through, shining between the stones. It was a celebration of knowledge and preparation, not a ritual of worship, but of gratitude for the guidance the Creator placed within nature. By learning from the sky, they lived in harmony with the land. As humanity advanced, the stars became their navigation system. Sailors learned how to use the North Star to find direction on open seas. Travelers could look to the constellations to understand where they were and where they were going. It is humbling to think that before maps, before compasses, it was the heavens that helped people cross deserts and oceans. The stars served as silent companions in every journey, placed perfectly so that even in darkness there was guidance. The more they observed, the more connections they found. Certain stars returned every season, and some seemed to move differently. These slow-moving lights were the planets. Though ancient people didn't yet know that word, they called them wanderers, simply because they shifted through the constellations. By noting their paths, early observers began to see the universe as an ordered system, one that could be studied and understood. It was an early form of science, shaped not by technology, but by patience and curiosity. At night, families would sit together and share what they saw. Stories were told, not to glorify the stars themselves, but to remember their patterns. A cluster of bright lights might be remembered as a hunter or a bird or a boat, not as beings to worship, but as visual guides. These tales helped children learn which stars rose in spring and which faded by winter. It was memory through storytelling, knowledge hidden in the gentle rhythm of narrative. Through these quiet lessons, astronomy passed from generation to generation. Even when cities began to rise, people never truly stopped looking up. In every civilization, from the deserts of Arabia to the valleys of China, the sky remained a shared teacher. Different cultures gave the stars different names, but the act of watching them was universal. It connected rulers and farmers alike, rich and poor, because everyone needed to understand the rhythm of time. The heavens reminded them that all creation followed one design, one system of balance that no human hand could change. It was both humbling and deeply peaceful. As night gave way to dawn, the stars would fade, and people returned to their daily work. But those who had watched the night sky carried its lessons with them. They understood that order could be found even in silence, that patience revealed patterns the hurried mind could not see. Astronomy became a quiet reflection of life itself, steady, rhythmic, and full of meaning. It reminded them that knowledge is not always loud or sudden, but often discovered slowly, one night at a time. Today, we have telescopes that reach beyond the planets. We send probes to measure distant galaxies, and we write complex equations to describe how the universe moves. But the wonder remains the same. That first feeling of looking up, of asking what is out there, has never left us. It is the same curiosity that guided the first people who traced the stars across the sky. Technology may have changed, but the human heart, the part that wonders, remains constant. As you listen tonight, perhaps you can imagine those first stargazers again, sitting quietly, wrapped in soft darkness, breathing slowly, watching the heavens drift above them. Their world was quieter, but their questions were the same as ours. Where did it all come from? Why does it move so perfectly? Each question was a doorway to understanding, a gentle path toward knowledge, not control. And through that patience, humanity began to find its place in the universe. So, before we close this first chapter, take one last slow breath. The same stars that guided ancient travelers still shine over you now. Their light has crossed centuries just to reach your eyes tonight. It is a simple reminder that creation moves with purpose, and that peace can be found in recognizing that order. As you drift towards sleep, let that thought stay with you, that even in the stillness of night, you are surrounded by signs of care and design. The story of astronomy has just begun, and tomorrow we'll continue exploring how the heavens shaped the earliest civilizations. Long before the first calendars were drawn on stone or parchment, the night sky served as humanity's greatest timekeeper. The stars appeared and vanished in patterns that repeated every year, like the rhythm of a song that never stopped playing. People learned that the heavens did not move by chance. There was precision in the rising and setting of each light above, a harmony that marked the passing of time. To look up at night was to read the silent clock of the universe. The sun, too, became a trusted guide. Its journey across the sky revealed the length of days and the turning of the seasons. By watching where it rose and where it set, early observers could tell when the longest and shortest days arrived. They noticed the warmth that returned after winter, and how the shadows changed as the months passed. It was not only observation, it was survival. To know the sun's pattern was to understand when to sow, when to harvest, and when to prepare for the long rest of winter. The moon became another teacher. Night by night, it grew and faded, moving from a thin curve to a full, glowing circle, and then disappearing into darkness once more. Each phase told a story of time's passage. Farmers learned to plant during certain moon phases, noticing how crops grew differently depending on the light. Fishermen, too, used it to predict tides and the best times to sail. The moon was not a symbol of power, but of balance, placed perfectly to help people measure the rhythm of life. In many early communities, the stars were named for their purpose. A certain cluster might be called the bringer of rain because it appeared when the clouds began to gather. Another might be known as the harvester, rising when the fields turned golden. These names were not given to worship them, but to remember their meaning. It was a form of storytelling that preserved knowledge, a natural language between earth and sky, passed quietly from one generation to the next. The movement of the stars told people when to begin journeys, when to build, and when to rest. Each pattern was a message of order in a world that could often feel uncertain. When rivers flooded or storms destroyed crops, the sky reminded them that time would turn again, that hardship, like the seasons, was not permanent. By learning to trust that rhythm, people found patience and hope. The heavens were a calendar written in light, free for all to see. Over time, certain stars became anchors of the year. People noticed that when a bright star appeared before dawn, it often marked the start of a new season. These recurring moments became signals of great importance. Festivals, preparations, and journeys were often timed to these celestial events, not for superstition, but for certainty, a reassurance that time could be measured. And the world followed a pattern beyond human control. This gave life a sense of order, even in its simplest routines. In some ancient valleys, markers of stone were built to trace the sun's movement. A shadow cast at sunrise would fall on a certain line during planting season, and another during harvest. Each line became a record, a physical reminder of time's passage. Even without words, these stones spoke clearly. Life followed a rhythm given by the heavens. For the people who built them, such understanding meant stability, preparation, and peace. When night came, they turned their eyes upward again. They found that the stars moved just slightly each evening, rising and setting in new positions. After a full year, they returned to where they had been before, the first great measure of the solar cycle. This discovery was astonishing. It meant that time was not chaos, but order. The heavens were like a perfect script, unfolding with precision far beyond human making. By studying the sky, they began to divide time into smaller parts. Days became months, and months became years. Each new moon began a new cycle, each season held its own meaning. This structure shaped the earliest societies, allowing them to plan not only their work, but their rest. In the heavens, they saw both movement and mercy, the assurance that day would follow night, and that after every season of hardship, light would return. In a sense, the first calendars were not carved into stone at all, they were carved into memory. Every family, every community carried within them the awareness of when stars would rise and fade. They watched, they remembered, and they adjusted their lives to the slow dance above. To them, this was not science or faith, but simple harmony with the world around them. And through that harmony, early astronomy quietly became the foundation of civilization itself. As human life grew more settled, the knowledge of the sky became essential. Farmers waited for the appearance of certain stars before planting, knowing that their return marked the change of season. The fields, the rivers, and even the animals followed these celestial rhythms. The heavens provided order when the earth could not always be trusted. It was a quiet partnership between the sky above and the soil below. In every land, people built small traditions around the turning of time. When the sun reached its highest point in the year, they rested and prepared for harvest. When it began to sink earlier, they stored food and made their homes warm. These actions were not ceremonies of worship, but gratitude, a way to honor the signs that the Almighty placed in creation to guide human life. By watching the sky, they learned to live with balance and foresight. Among traveling peoples, the stars became a lifeline. In vast deserts or endless seas, the heavens provided direction when no landmarks could be seen. The North Star, steady and unmoving, offered comfort to travelers in the night. Many would whisper its position to one another, trusting that it would lead them home. Even in darkness, they were never truly lost, because the design of the sky remained faithful. Over generations, this understanding of time and direction became part of human identity. Entire communities organized their work and rest according to the motions of the sun and moon. They learned that patience and observation could reveal great wisdom. Each sunrise and sunset became a lesson in trust, that life followed a pattern, even when it seemed uncertain. In that calm recognition, they found peace. The sky also taught humility. It reminded people that they were small parts of something vast and precise. No human could move the stars or command the sun to rise early, yet by studying them, humanity could learn discipline and awareness. Knowledge of the heavens was never about control, but about understanding the beauty of order, a reflection of divine wisdom in motion. Slowly, this awareness shaped the rhythm of societies. Markets opened according to daylight, journeys began at dawn, and gatherings took place when the moon was bright enough to see by. The sky shaped not only agriculture, but culture itself. It guided music, stories, and architecture. Every part of life carried traces of its silent instruction. In some places, scholars began to record what they saw. They drew symbols for the stars, marked their rising points, and calculated how long it took for them to return. These simple observations grew into early systems of mathematics. To measure time required counting, and counting required writing. In that way, the sky helped humanity invent both science and language. Astronomy quietly became the bridge between wonder and knowledge. Though centuries have passed, the same truth remains. Our modern calendars, our clocks, and even our digital timekeepers still trace their roots to the movements of the heavens. Every hour, every month, every year is a reflection of what our ancestors saw long ago. When you look at your watch, you are, in a way, still reading the sky, only in a form shaped by human hands. Yet, despite all our progress, the feeling remains unchanged. When night falls and the first stars appear, something ancient stirs within us. It is the same awareness that guided the first farmers, sailors, and storytellers. A quiet recognition that time flows with purpose, that order exists in the vastness above, and in that realization, we can still find the same comfort that they did, a sense of peace written in the stars. The sky as a calendar was never about control or fortune. It was about alignment, living in step with the patterns that sustain life. Through patience and observation, early people learned that every season, every dawn, every return of a star was a reminder of mercy and design. They did not own the heavens, but they listened to them. And from that listening, civilization itself was born, calm, steady, and full of quiet gratitude for the order of creation. When we think of ancient Egypt, we often imagine grand pyramids, silent statues, and the golden sands of the desert. But for the Egyptians, Life was not ruled by stone, it was ruled by water. The Nile River, flowing gently from the south to the north, was their lifeline. Each year it flooded, bringing rich soil to the farmlands and turning the desert green. And the key to predicting that life-giving flood was written in the stars. Egyptian observers noticed that one bright star appeared in the dawn sky just before the annual flooding began. This star was known as Sirius, a small point of light that returned faithfully every year. Its reappearance was more than coincidence. It marked the beginning of a new cycle. For them, this was a sign of renewal, of preparation, of balance between heaven and earth. It was the universe reminding them that time itself had rhythm. Through careful observation, Egyptian scholars began to measure the days between each rising of Sirius. They realized it took roughly the same number of days as one full solar year. From this discovery, one of the earliest calendars in human history was born. It guided the planting of crops, the storage of food, and the organization of daily life. Astronomy, for them, was not distant study, it was the language of survival. The sky, the river, and the land worked together like parts of a single system. When the river rose, people rejoiced. When it fell, they harvested. By understanding when each change would occur, they avoided famine and chaos. Their observations of the heavens turned uncertainty into stability. In the order of the stars, they saw the mercy of the one who created that order. Each morning, as the sun rose over the eastern desert, it brought both warmth and promise. The Egyptians were skilled at noting its path, how it shifted slightly north or south each day. From this movement, they learned the pattern of seasons and the best times for agriculture. The sun, moon, and stars together became their teachers. They learned that nature was never random. It was precise, predictable, and filled with wisdom for those who paid attention. Many of their temples were built with this precision in mind. Architects designed them so that sunlight would enter the inner chambers only on certain days of the year. It was a breathtaking blend of art and science structures that honored knowledge, not superstition. When light touched the walls at the exact moment expected, it proved what they had learned from years of patient watching. It was a celebration of understanding the world's balance. In every village, the rising and setting of celestial bodies became the framework of time. When the moon was full, gatherings were held. When it waned, people rested. This rhythm created harmony between work and reflection, effort and gratitude. Their way of life flowed in step with creation's design. The heavens were a reminder that guidance was always near, not through worship of stars, but through reading the signs placed within them. The Egyptians' respect for the sky also shaped their sense of order and responsibility. To keep records of time was to protect the well-being of everyone. Astronomers and scribes became essential members of society. They didn't seek fame, only accuracy, to ensure that farmers, builders, and traders knew when to act. Their quiet diligence sustained an entire civilization. By studying the heavens, they learned to divide the year into seasons, the flooding, the growing, and the harvesting. Each season carried meaning beyond work. It was a lesson in patience. They knew that rushing would not change the rhythm of time. They understood that waiting could be wise, that balance was a form of strength. Through this, astronomy became not only a science, but a philosophy of living with grace. The flood of the Nile was both a test and a gift. Too much water could destroy homes, too little could bring hunger. But with knowledge of the stars, people prepared. They built storage, planted at the right time, and used their understanding to help one another. Astronomy became an act of compassion, knowledge used to protect life. For travelers crossing Egypt, the night sky was a familiar companion. Caravans, moved by the light of constellations, their paths marked by patterns above the desert. Even without roads, they could find their way home. The stars became their map, their compass, and their reassurance. It was as if the heavens themselves offered guidance to those who watched closely enough. The Egyptians also understood that the sky followed laws that never broke. No ruler, no kingdom, no power could change the rising of the sun. It reminded them that true control belonged only to the Creator of all things. This awareness gave their civilization humility, a rare quality in an age of great monuments. They built not to challenge the heavens, but to live in harmony with them. At night, when the desert cooled and the winds grew still, families gathered to rest beneath the stars. Children listened as elders spoke of the floods and the sky, teaching them when to plant, when to travel, and when to rest. It was education through storytelling, not myth, but memory. The stars above connected generations, linking the past and the future through shared understanding. Every light in the sky carried a lesson worth remembering. Some nights, the river shimmered under the moonlight, calm and wide. Its surface reflected the same stars that filled the heavens, creating the illusion of two skies, one above, one below. To the Egyptians, it was a quiet reminder that what happens above has reflection on earth. The order of the sky and the flow of the river were part of one design. They moved together in perfect, peaceful rhythm. Over time, Egyptian astronomers refined their calculations. They built simple instruments to measure angles, to record shadows, and to note the moments when stars appeared or vanished. They realized that knowledge was not just for the learned, it was for the survival of everyone. Their discoveries spread through generations, influencing lands far beyond the Nile. In this way, their quiet study of the heavens shaped the history of science itself. Even today, remnants of their precision remain. Some temples still align perfectly with the sun's position on certain days. The stones carved thousands of years ago still respond to light in exactly the same way. It is a silent testament to their patience and understanding. They looked at the world with care, and that care left a legacy that still glows under the same sun. The Egyptians saw the world not as chaos, but as harmony. Every season, every sunrise, every flood carried meaning and purpose. Through observation, they found stability in the midst of uncertainty. It is easy to imagine them standing by the riverbank, gazing at the stars, and finding reassurance in their return. They learned that patience and trust in the Creator's order were the keys to a peaceful life. When we look back at their civilization, it is easy to focus on the monuments, but their greatest achievement may not be made of stone at all. It may be their understanding of time, how they listened to the rhythm of creation and shaped their lives accordingly. In their study of the stars and the river, they discovered something timeless, that peace is found not in control, but in alignment with the world's balance. So, as the night deepens, imagine that quiet world again, the Nile flowing softly, the stars above moving with grace, the people below listening, learning, and living in harmony. That was the true rhythm of ancient Egypt, a rhythm written not in words, but in light and water. And though the centuries have passed, the sky still whispers the same song, waiting for anyone willing to look up and listen. As centuries passed, the knowledge of the stars continued to shape Egyptian life. The same riverside fields were cultivated generation after generation, guided by the same celestial signs. Each family passed down their understanding of the seasons, their stories tied to the heavens. This connection gave them stability in a world where empires rose and fell. The river might change its course slightly, but the stars above remained constant, a promise of continuity written in light. For Egyptian astronomers, accuracy became an act of devotion to truth. They measured carefully, observing how each sunrise shifted across the horizon with the passing months. Through such observation, they refined their calendars, predicting the flood of the Nile with remarkable precision. This wasn't just intellectual pursuit, was service to their people. A single miscalculation could mean hunger or loss, so their work demanded patience, humility, and care. Temples and observatories were built not for grandeur, but for learning. High platforms allowed clearer views of the sky, away from the dust and noise of daily life. Scribes stood beside astronomers, recording their findings onto stone and papyrus. Every detail mattered: the brightness of a star, the position of the moon, the length of a shadow. These quiet efforts built one of the earliest foundations of systematic science. Born from curiosity and guided by necessity, the Egyptians came to see time itself as something alive, breathing in rhythm with creation. Day followed night, flood followed drought, growth followed stillness. It was a perfect cycle that could not be rushed. Their way of life reflected this wisdom. They built slowly, planned carefully, and worked in harmony with the seasons. The understanding of the sky became a philosophy of patience and gratitude, not simply an exercise in calculation. At night, when torches dimmed and the desert winds cooled the air, a sense of calm settled over the land. The stars above the Nile shone brighter than in most places on earth, untouched by the smoke of cities. To gaze upward was to see order stretched across infinity. Families rested, knowing that the same heavens would greet them again the next evening. In that constancy, they found peace. Egyptian astronomers also noticed rare events, eclipses, comets, or sudden changes in brightness. They recorded them carefully, not as omens, but as part of the universe's vast design. Even when they didn't understand the cause, they recognized that nothing occurred without purpose. Each new discovery deepened their respect for the balance of creation. Knowledge did not weaken their faith, strengthened their awareness of the world's perfection. As their civilization expanded, so too did their influence. Other lands along the Mediterranean began to adopt Egyptian methods of tracking time. Traders carried not only goods but ideas: how to measure the year, how to divide it into months, and how to align architecture with the path of the sun. In this quiet exchange, Egyptian astronomy became the silent architect of global understanding. Through all of this, one principle remained unchanged: observation must serve life. The Egyptians studied the heavens not to control the future but to live wisely in the present. Their discoveries were practical, feeding people, guiding builders, organizing work. They understood that true knowledge benefits others. To them, science was not separate from morality. It was an extension of responsibility. Even the language of time in Egypt reflected reverence for precision. Each day was divided carefully, each season marked with intention. The same discipline that shaped their monuments also shaped their hours. They built calendars, measured the shadow of the obelisk, and counted the days of the flood's arrival. Every task had its time, and every time had its purpose. This rhythm gave their civilization its quiet strength. As the centuries went on, the patterns they discovered continued to guide daily life. Farmers would rise before dawn, waiting for the light to touch the fields. Fishermen timed their work to the moon's reflection on the river. Builders planned their projects for seasons of steady weather. All of this was possible because someone, long ago, had looked to the sky and learned its language. The stars taught them discipline, and discipline sustained them. The priests and scholars who guarded this knowledge treated it with great respect. They knew that the heavens were vast, and human understanding was small. Each generation sought to refine, not to claim mastery. They believed that learning was endless, that no matter how many stars they mapped, there would always be more beyond sight. This humility kept their pursuit pure, and endless curiosity balanced with gratitude. Over time, stories about the sky were told to help preserve memory. The rising of Sirius, the journey of the sun across the year, the changes in the moon all became woven into their culture. These stories weren't about divine beings, but reminders of nature's order. They made the lessons memorable, so that even those who could not read the stars could still live by their rhythm. It was storytelling as education, crafted in kindness. By observing the heavens, Egyptians also began to understand geography and direction. They aligned their temples north to south, following the path of celestial movement. This precision influenced architecture far beyond their borders. Centuries later, builders in other lands would study the same principles, tracing their lineage back to the banks of the Nile. The knowledge of one people quietly shaped the world that followed. There was a quiet beauty in their approach to knowledge. They never separated the practical from the spiritual, nor the earthly from the celestial. To learn about the sky was to learn about oneself, to see order above and seek order within. Their calm persistence reflected the very stars they studied, steady, constant, unhurried. Their wisdom lay not in discovery alone, but in how they used it with gentleness and care. The legacy of Egyptian astronomy still lives today, though often unseen. Every time we look at a calendar, every time we speak of months and seasons, we echo their discoveries. The system of time that guides our days began beside the Nile. Through them, humanity learned that the heavens could be measured, and that such measurement could bring peace to daily life. Their patience became our inheritance. Even now, when we see the bright star Sirius rise before dawn, we witness the same signal that once guided the ancient farmers. The same light that reflected on the river thousands of years ago still travels across the sky each year. It connects our present to their past, a bridge of understanding carried by starlight. The heavens continue to speak, just as clearly, to anyone who pauses to listen. For those ancient observers, each moment under the sky was a reminder of mercy. They lived surrounded by the unpredictable floods, droughts, storms, but the stars never failed them. That faith in natural order gave them strength to endure. The world around them might shift and crumble, but the heavens above remained perfectly aligned, just as the Creator had made them. In the stillness of night, when the wind rippled across the water, one could almost imagine the quiet gratitude that filled their hearts. They saw in every reflection of starlight a sign that life continued, that creation was sustained by design. It was not an age of miracles, but of observation, an age where faith and knowledge walked hand in hand beneath the endless sky. Their story reminds us that peace often comes not from discovery, but from understanding. The Egyptians didn't seek to conquer the heavens. They sought to live by them, to move in harmony with the great clockwork of the universe. In that balance, they found purpose. In patience, they found strength. And in every sunrise over the Nile, they found renewal. As the night draws to a close in our story, picture the ancient river once more, the stars fading as the horizon glows, the people rising quietly to begin their day. The same light that guided them shines on us now. It tells the same truth. They once knew that time is not an enemy to race against, but a rhythm to be embraced. And so, with each turning of the heavens, the lesson of Egypt continues. Far to the east of Egypt, where two great rivers shaped the land, another civilization began to lift its eyes to the heavens. Between the Tigris and the Euphrates, the ancient peoples of Mesopotamia watched the same sky, tracing its movements with patience and care. Their world was one of clay, water, and wide horizons, where the stars shone clearly against the desert night. They, too, sought understanding how the heavens moved, and what that motion could teach them about life on Earth. At first, their observations were simple. Farmers noticed that the stars rose in slightly different places each season, and that their appearance matched the times of planting and harvest. Gradually, patterns were recognized and marked into memory. The Mesopotamians began to record these moments with the tools they knew, best small wedges pressed into clay tablets. It was here that astronomy took a monumental step forward, from memory into record. Each night, scribes and observers gathered on rooftops, noting the moon's shape, the brightness of certain stars, and the length of darkness between sunsets. They marked every change carefully, believing that knowledge preserved was knowledge protected. Their records were not mystical, they were mathematical, rooted in repetition and reason. What they built on those humble clay tablets would become the oldest written observations of the sky in human history. They noticed that the moon's cycle repeated every 29 to 30 days. It waxed and waned, and then returned again, marking a perfect measure of time. From this, they divided months and counted the passing of years. Their months began with the sighting of the new moon, a practice that would influence calendars across generations and cultures. For them, the heavens were a teacher that never slept. Over time, the Mesopotamians began to name the stars and track their paths with astonishing precision. They saw that some stars did not stay fixed but wandered slowly across the night sky. These they called the moving ones, what we now know as planets. They followed them for centuries, noting their speed, brightness, and alignment. They did not see gods in them. They saw order, evidence of a system far greater than themselves. Their records were remarkable for their accuracy. Some tablets list eclipses that can still be confirmed by modern astronomy today. They understood that these events were not signs of anger or fortune, but natural parts of the universe's pattern. Their calm, observational approach showed that science and faith could exist side by side, one seeking to understand creation, the other to appreciate the Creator's precision. The Mesopotamians also developed ways to measure time during the day. They built simple instruments to follow the shadow of the sunsticks or towers that marked its changing length as hours passed. From these humble beginnings came the world's first sundials. They turned light and shadow into tools of understanding, learning that even the passing of a single day followed a structure designed with perfect balance. In cities like Babylon and Ur, astronomy became a respected art. The observers were trusted advisors, guiding farmers, builders, and sailors. Their role was not to predict destiny, but to plan with wisdom. The rising of certain stars marked the start of construction seasons or safe times to travel the rivers. This was practical knowledge, used for good. In studying the heavens, they brought order to the ground beneath their feet. Over generations, the knowledge deepened. They began to measure the positions of the sun and moon in relation to the horizon, using sighting lines from towers or temple roofs. Each observation was logged, compared, and tested over time. Their dedication turned curiosity into a discipline. They were not chasing superstition, they were building a science that honored precision and patience. The clay tablets they left behind are more than artifacts. They are echoes of human thought reaching for understanding. In neat rows of symbols, we can still read their nightly observations. the moon rose in the east. A bright star was seen in the west. The night was calm. These simple words, written thousands of years ago, remind us of humanity's oldest conversation with the sky, a dialogue that continues even now. The rivers around them flooded and receded, much like the Nile, shaping their way of life. To survive, they needed to know when waters would rise, when seasons would shift, and when rains might come. The stars offered the answers. Each year, they checked the heavens, comparing their notes to the changes on Earth. When the patterns aligned, they felt assurance, not in fate, but in the consistency of creation's design. Their astronomers also became mathematicians. To measure the heavens, they invented systems of counting and geometry. They divided circles into 360 degrees, a convention still used in modern science. They tracked the hours in groups of 60, giving us the foundation for our minutes and seconds. Every glance upward added another piece to the great structure of human knowledge. Their writings reveal a deep respect for time itself. They saw it not as an enemy to be controlled, but as something sacred, an unbroken chain connecting all things. Each sunrise marked renewal, each full moon a reminder that life moved in cycles. By studying these rhythms, they learned not just about the heavens, but about patience, discipline, and trust in the order set before them. In the calm of the Mesopotamian night, one can imagine those early observers wrapped in silence, marking their notes by torchlight. The soft scratch of a stylus on clay, the whisper of wind, the quiet glow of distant stars. They were ordinary people, yet their work reached beyond generations. Every mark they left carried forward an understanding that light and motion could be measured, that the universe had logic. Their observatories were simple open rooftops, flat towers, sometimes just the tops of homes. Yet from these modest places, they mapped the heavens. They learned that even small tools could reveal vast truths when used with patience. This was science in its purest form, steady observation, guided by humility, seeking understanding without pride. As centuries passed, their methods grew more refined. They began predicting lunar cycles and tracking how long it took the sun to return to the same place in the sky. This accuracy made them the keepers of time for the ancient world. Kings and merchants relied on their records, farmers trusted their calendars, and travelers followed their stars. Knowledge became service, and service became legacy. The clay tablets of Mesopotamia stand as the first scientific archive. They show that curiosity is as old as humanity itself. The urge to measure, to note, to understand, was never about power. It was about connection to the land, to time, to the greater pattern that holds everything together. In this sense, their science was also an act of quiet reflection, an acknowledgement of the perfection in creation's design. At night, when they looked up from their work, they must have felt what we still feel, the calm of seeing something vast and steady above. The stars offered no wealth, no conquest, only stillness. Yet that stillness gave them strength. It reminded them that even in uncertainty, there was structure, that the same heavens would shine again tomorrow, just as faithfully as before. Mesopotamia's contribution to astronomy cannot be overstated. They turned the sky into a library where every star was a sentence and every movement a verse. From their records, later civilizations would learn to build calendars, to navigate seas, and to study the universe. Their efforts began a chain of knowledge that continues even now, connecting us across thousands of years. And as we think of them tonight, sitting beneath that same sky, we can almost see their silhouettes against the starlight. Quiet, patient, recording what they saw, not to predict the future, but to understand the present. They found meaning not through miracles, but through observation, and in doing so, they began humanity's long journey from wonder to wisdom. As their records grew in number, Mesopotamian scholars began comparing centuries of observations. They discovered that the heavens followed rules, not whims. The moon's path, the rising of certain stars, even the rare darkening of the sun, all repeated in measurable cycles. Each new tablet confirmed what they had begun to suspect, that creation moved with precision. To study it was to read the language of balance written across the sky. This understanding gave them confidence. They realized that by keeping careful records, they could prepare for what would come. Floods, planting seasons, river levels, all seemed connected to the rhythm above. It was not superstition that guided them, but reason. Their calendars became tools of organization, helping them bring order to the unpredictable. In the regularity of the heavens, they found reassurance that life itself was guided by structure. The temples of Mesopotamia often stood as centers of knowledge. Within their walls, scholars gathered at night to discuss their findings. The clay tablets they produced were stored carefully, protected from the elements. Some were recopied by students who spent their lives learning to read the stars. It was quiet work, slow and precise. No one sought glory from it, only understanding. The act of recording truth was seen as service to their community. Their culture valued the steady pursuit of knowledge. They believed that observation and discipline were forms of wisdom. To measure the path of the moon, to calculate its return, was a sign of patience. It taught them that answers do not always come quickly. They must be earned through time, through calm watching and honest recording. That patience shaped not only their science, but their way of thinking about life itself. Among their many achievements was the creation of star catalogues, of constellations and bright stars arranged by their positions in the sky. These early maps allowed future generations to navigate the world and measure time more accurately. Each name, each symbol pressed into clay, represented the merging of generations of effort. Their work became the backbone of astronomy for centuries to come, even influencing scholars far beyond their borders. When we read their records today, we see both science and humanity. We see their questions, their curiosity, their small mistakes, and their great corrections. We see minds searching for order in a world that could be harsh and uncertain. They built their understanding not through invention, but through careful attention to what already existed. In that humility lay their strength. They did not try to change the heavens. They listened to them. Their measurement of time shaped how people lived each day. Markets opened with the sun's rise. Prayers and gatherings followed its movement, and rest came when shadows grew long. The stars were the silent clock that guided every task. Through this shared rhythm, communities stayed connected. Everyone, from farmers to builders, worked within the same flow of time, an invisible harmony linking the earth to the sky. In later centuries, when empires rose and fell across the region, their astronomical knowledge endured. New rulers might rewrite laws or build new cities, but they continued to rely on the same records of the stars. The wisdom of the heavens was seen as constant, beyond politics or power. It united generations under a single truth, that the universe followed a design larger than any kingdom. For the Mesopotamians, learning from the heavens was also a moral pursuit. It reminded them that order was possible, that discipline and observation led to peace. The same patience that governed the movement of the stars could guide human behavior. If the heavens could stay steady, then people too could learn to live with balance. Their science was not cold or mechanical, it was filled with purpose. When the nights were clear, The sky above Mesopotamia seemed endless. With no city lights to hide it, every star was visible, sharp and bright. Observers could see the Milky Way stretching across the darkness like a soft river of light. They must have felt small under that immensity, yet comforted by its predictability. To them, the heavens were both vast and familiar, an ever-present companion that never failed to return. They also discovered that celestial events could be predicted years in advance. The reappearance of certain planets or the timing of eclipses became part of their long-term calculations. Though they did not know the physics behind these movements, their data was incredibly accurate. Their discipline laid the foundation for future astronomers to explore deeper truths. Every careful note they made became a stepping stone for discoveries yet to come. Over time, their methods of recording spread beyond Mesopotamia. Travelers and traders carried copies of their star tables to neighboring lands. The patterns and principles they established influenced scholars in Persia, Arabia, and later in Greece. The desire to understand the heavens became a shared human tradition. It crossed borders, languages, and centuries, connecting people through a single act. Looking up, each civilization added its own insight. But the heart of it began here in the silence of the Mesopotamian night, where a few observers wrote on clay beneath starlight. Their patience outlasted their empires. Long after their cities crumbled into dust, their records survived, waiting to be read. It is humbling to think that their words, pressed into clay millennia ago, still speak clearly to us today. Modern scientists studying those tablets often find themselves amazed. Some align perfectly with modern data, confirming eclipses or lunar cycles that occurred thousands of years ago. The precision of those ancient hands reminds us that curiosity and observation are timeless qualities. The tools may change, but the desire to understand creation remains the same. In a way, their achievements reflect a universal truth that the pursuit of knowledge, when guided by patience and sincerity, can transcend time itself. They worked not for fame but for clarity. They sought not power but harmony. Their discoveries were not shouted from towers. They were whispered into clay, carried by the hands of quiet scholars who understood the value of truth. When dawn approached, the observers would put away their tools and step down from the rooftops. The night's work ended as the horizon began to glow. The stars faded, replaced by the light of morning. Their records were stored carefully, ready for review the next night. And so the cycle continued, one evening after another, building a library of light across generations. Their devotion to knowledge stands as a gentle reminder that wisdom grows slowly, like the rising of the moon. It does not demand attention, it asks for patience. The Mesopotamians showed that understanding comes not through haste, but through stillness. They listened to creation, and in doing so, they learned how to live in rhythm with it. Even now, when we look up at the night sky, we share something with them. We see the same stars, moving in the same patterns, shining with the same light. Though thousands of years have passed, the experience is unchanged. The heavens continue their endless rhythm, steady and sure. In their quiet glow, we can still feel what those first astronomers must have felt: a sense of wonder, humility, and peace. The story of Mesopotamia is not only the story of science, it is the story of listening. The clay tablets they left behind are proof that careful attention can turn curiosity into legacy. They remind us that even the smallest act, watching the stars, marking the passage of time, can echo across history. In their stillness, they gave us one of humanity's first gifts of understanding. And as we close this chapter, imagine the last observer of the night standing on a rooftop, watching the final stars fade into dawn. He sets his stylus aside and takes a breath of cool morning air. The work is quiet, almost invisible, yet its meaning is vast. Above him, the same heavens move, unchanged and perfect, whispering the same truth they always have. That knowledge begins with wonder, and wonder begins with looking up. After the rivers of Egypt and Mesopotamia came the hills and coastlines of Greece, where another kind of observer looked to the heavens. The Greeks inherited knowledge from the older civilizations, yet they added something new: the desire not only to record what they saw, but to understand why. Their curiosity was not about predicting floods or seasons anymore. It was about searching for the principles that governed everything, the unseen order that shaped the world. In the soft Mediterranean nights, philosophers and thinkers sat by the sea, watching the stars reflected in the dark water. They wondered if the universe followed laws, the way music followed rhythm or geometry followed pattern. For them, the beauty of the heavens hinted at purpose. The Greeks believed that if the heavens moved with precision, then reason could uncover that logic. They began to think of the universe not as chaos, but as harmony, an orchestra of light. These early thinkers did not have telescopes or instruments, yet their minds were sharp enough to imagine the structure of the cosmos. They noticed how the moon always showed the same face, how the sun's path changed gently across the seasons, and how the stars moved in slow perfection. They drew conclusions that would shape the way humanity viewed the universe for centuries. Theirs was not a science of machines, but of thought. One of the first great observers was Thales of Miletus, who believed that nature itself could be studied and explained. He suggested that the movements of the heavens were not ruled by chance, but by consistent principles. Though his tools were simple, his ideas were revolutionary. He looked at the sky as a field of reason, not mystery. In doing so, he helped humanity take another step away from superstition and closer to understanding. Another great mind, Pythagoras, saw a connection between mathematics and the cosmos. He observed that harmony in music came from precise numerical ratios and believed the same applied to the universe. The stars and planets, he thought, might follow invisible patterns of proportion and motion. While some of his ideas were symbolic, they reflected an important truth: the universe is built on balance. His search for order inspired generations of scholars after him. Later came Plato, whose students gathered beneath olive trees to discuss how perfection might exist beyond human sight. He imagined that the heavens moved according to eternal forms of order, perfect and unchanging. Though his views were philosophical, not scientific, they nurtured a mindset that saw knowledge as a reflection of higher truth. To understand the heavens was to understand stability, reason, and discipline. Then came Aristotle, the careful observer who believed that knowledge must come through experience. He studied the movements of the moon, the changes in light, and the shape of shadows. He wrote that the earth was round because its shadow curved across the moon during an eclipse. His explanations were not always perfect, but his approach to look, to reason, to test became the foundation of scientific thought. Aristotle taught that truth begins with observation. To the Greeks, astronomy was not separate from philosophy. It was a way of contemplating creation itself. They believed that studying the heavens taught lessons about balance and proportion, ideas that they also applied to art, architecture, and ethics. The same geometry that shaped their temples also shaped their understanding of the universe. Their search for harmony was both practical and spiritual reflection of the order they saw in the world around them. As Greek knowledge deepened, new schools of thought emerged. Astronomers like Eudoxus tried to explain planetary motion through mathematical models. imagining spheres within spheres that carried the stars. Though these early models were not entirely accurate, they represented a new kind of courage, the courage to build explanations based on reasoning rather than myth. For the first time, humanity began to chart the heavens through logic. In Alexandria, scholars built one of the greatest libraries of the ancient world. Within its walls, thinkers from many lands gathered to share their ideas about the stars. Observers recorded data, compared notes, and refined earlier calculations from Mesopotamia and Egypt. It was a melting pot of knowledge where the past met the future. The Greeks did not see themselves as isolated, they saw themselves as part of a long conversation that spanned civilizations. Hipparchus, one of the greatest Greek astronomers, brought mathematics and observation together in ways never seen before. He measured the brightness of stars and created one of the first star catalogues. He also discovered the slow movement of Earth's axis, a phenomenon known today as precession. His work was so precise that modern astronomers still use his data as reference. Through him, observation reached a new level of accuracy. The most famous name of all was Ptolemy, who lived in Alexandria centuries later. He combined all the knowledge of those before him into a grand model of the universe. In his view, the Earth stood at the center, and the planets moved in perfect circles around it. Though this model would later be replaced, it stood for over 1,000 years as humanity's best attempt to explain the cosmos. His work was the product of faith in reason, not in myth. For the Greeks, studying the heavens was also a moral exercise. It required patience, humility, and honesty, virtues they considered essential to wisdom. They believed that by observing the heavens, people could learn to live with greater discipline. The steady cycles of the sky taught steadiness of mind. In a world filled with change, the stars were symbols of constancy. Their movement reminded people that balance was the foundation of peace. At night, Greek observers stood on quiet hillsides, marking the paths of stars above the sea. They built instruments like the armillary sphere, a framework of rings that represented the circles of the heavens. With these tools, they tested their theories and refined their models. Each discovery brought them closer to seeing the universe, not as chaos, but as elegant design. Every new calculation was a step toward order. Their pursuit of understanding shaped not only science, but culture itself. Greek poets wrote about the stars as symbols of thought and endurance. Architects designed temples that mirrored the proportions of the cosmos. The same mathematical harmony found in the heavens was echoed in music and art. To them, beauty and order were inseparable. The sky was simply the highest form of both. This blending of reason and imagination gave Greek astronomy its lasting power. They were dreamers who measured, thinkers who observed, and philosophers who built theories grounded in what they could see. Their questions reached beyond the visible, but remained tied to reality. That balance between curiosity and logic would become the heart of scientific inquiry for generations to come. Yet for all their brilliance, the Greeks never lost their sense of wonder. They knew that the universe, no matter how well described, remained beyond full comprehension. Each discovery only deepened their respect for the perfection of creation. The more they measured, the more they realized how vast it truly was. Their humility gave their science its soul. When the night grew still, their cities quiet, and the sea shimmered beneath the stars, one could imagine these early thinkers gazing upward. Their discussions might fade into silence as they watched the heavens turn. The movement of the stars became both a question and an answer, reminder that order existed even when human life felt uncertain. In that quiet understanding, they found peace. Their legacy endured long after their temples crumbled. The Romans would carry their knowledge westward, and centuries later, Muslim scholars would preserve and expand it, refining their calculations and uncovering new truths about the heavens. But it all began with a few minds in Greece who chose to look at the sky and ask not for miracles, but for meaning. The Greek search for order was more than science, it was a reflection of human hope. They believed that to understand the world was to live wisely within it. Their work became the bridge between observation and philosophy, between knowledge and faith. And though their theories would one day change, their message remained the same. That truth reveals itself to those who look patiently, think deeply, and listen to the quiet rhythm of the heavens. The ideas of the Greek philosophers did not remain confined to their small cities. Their writings traveled, copied by hand, carried across seas, and discussed in new lands. Every generation found something within them worth preserving, the method of asking questions, of testing, and of reasoning. What began as humble observations under starlight became the foundation for the world's understanding of nature and motion. Knowledge became a living tradition, handed down like an heirloom of the mind. For the Greeks, learning was a communal act. Teachers shared their thoughts with students, who in turn questioned, refined, and expanded them. It was never about proving others wrong, but about moving together toward truth. This patient dialogue built one of humanity's first academic cultures. They did not always agree, yet they shared one belief that the universe could be understood through study. In that shared purpose, they found unity. Their approach to knowledge changed how humanity thought about cause and effect. They began to see that every movement had a reason, every change followed a rule. The sky was no longer mysterious chaos. It was an expression of order. This simple realization would echo through centuries of science. It taught that understanding creation required patience and respect, not superstition. The Greeks built their theories on observation, and their observation on wonder. Even their mistakes became valuable. When their models failed to match the movements of the planets, they revised them. When new evidence appeared, they adapted. This humility set them apart. They were not content with answers, they wanted accurate ones. Their willingness to correct themselves became the heartbeat of scientific honesty. To the Greeks, to be wrong was not shameful. Refusing to learn was. In their search for order, they found beauty in proportion. They saw how geometry could describe the world, how symmetry brought harmony. To them, the same balance that governed the stars could also shape the design of a building or the rhythm of a poem. Science, art, and philosophy were not separate, they were reflections of one truth. Everything created followed a pattern, and to understand that pattern was to appreciate the wisdom behind it. This unity of knowledge created a culture of calm discipline. The Greeks did not rush discovery. They observed slowly, compared notes, and built upon what was proven. They understood that truth revealed itself in time. The quiet act of observing the stars taught them virtues that extended beyond astronomy: patience, respect, and a deep sense of order. Their science was as much a reflection of character as of intellect. From their ideas came new tools of thought. Geometry turned into measurement, reasoning became logic, and philosophy inspired method. The scientific process, observe, test, refine, was born in their hands. They gave future generations the structure to explore safely, guided by principles of evidence and balance. Their legacy was not just knowledge, but a way of thinking that respected both logic and humility. As their influence spread, it touched everything around them. Navigation became more accurate. construction grew more precise. Music, painting, and poetry began to follow mathematical proportion. The same laws that guided the heavens began to shape the world of human creation. It was as if they had found a bridge between earth and sky, an invisible connection made through understanding. Yet for all their learning, they remained aware of their limits. The philosophers often spoke of how small humanity was compared to the vastness of the heavens. No matter how well they described the cosmos, they knew they could never control it. That humility grounded their pursuit of truth. They sought to understand the universe, not to rule over it, but to live wisely within its design. In their writings, they often compared the heavens to a great clock whose gears turned in silence. Each star moved according to laws that never failed, and the earth turned within that order. This vision gave them comfort. It meant that creation was not chaos, it was harmony. Even when storms came or wars broke out, the heavens continued their path unbroken. To the Greeks, this constancy was proof of perfection beyond human reach. When they studied the stars, they also studied themselves. They believed that inner discipline mirrored the order of the cosmos. Just as the planets moved with purpose, so too should a person live with balance and self-control. The harmony of the universe became a guide for ethical living. Knowledge and virtue, in their view, were parts of the same truth. One could not flourish without the other. In quiet courtyards, students would gather to listen to their teachers speak of the heavens. Oil lamps flickered as lessons flowed between observation and reflection. They talked not only about numbers and angles, but about what those patterns meant for the human soul. They saw no conflict between reason and reverence. The study of the world was, for them, a form of gratitude and appreciation of the order they did not create but could learn from. Over time, their methods shaped generations of thinkers who came after. Centuries later, when the torch of knowledge moved eastward, Muslim scholars in Damascus, Baghdad, and Cordoba would build upon these Greek foundations. They would refine the measurements, correct the errors, and extend the reach of astronomy further than the Greeks ever imagined. Yet the spirit remained the same: respect for precision, order, and purpose. Greek thought became a seed planted in the soil of civilization. Though empires changed and languages faded, the roots of logic endured. The way we reason, calculate, and measure owes much to those nights beneath the Mediterranean stars. Their search for order still guides how humanity learns today. Their discoveries shaped the methods that would later explore everything from motion to medicine. Each time a scientist looks through a telescope, they follow a path first traced by those early thinkers. Each time we describe the world with numbers, we echo their belief in harmony. The legacy of Greece is not marble ruins or broken columns, it is the quiet conviction that knowledge brings peace when pursued with patience and sincerity. If one were to stand where they once stood, on a Greek hillside facing the sea, the stars would look the same. The air would be cool, the waves soft against the shore. The same constellations would rise, the same moon would drift across the night. Nothing in the heavens has changed, and yet everything humanity has learned began from that ancient wonder. It is peaceful to imagine them there, their silhouettes outlined against the starlight. They spoke softly, calculated slowly, and believed deeply in the power of reason. They were not seeking glory or wealth, only understanding. Their discoveries may have faded into history, but their spirit remains a reminder that wisdom begins in curiosity and grows through patience. As their civilization aged, wars and politics would scatter their scholars, but their ideas endured. They traveled through centuries, through translations, through generations of minds. Each era reshaped them, Yet their core remained, the belief that creation is ordered, that reason can reveal it, and that beauty lies in understanding what is true. That was the heart of Greek astronomy and of Greek philosophy itself. And so, when the stars rose each evening above the white stones of their cities, they watched in silence. Their thoughts were not of conquest or wealth, but of wonder. They saw in the heavens a mirror of harmony, a lesson that still speaks quietly to us now, that the pursuit of knowledge, when guided by humility, brings peace. The Greeks searched for order and, in doing so, they found reflection of it within their own hearts. When the light of Greek thought began to fade in the West, it found new life under the desert skies of the Muslim world. From the 8th to the 14th century, a new generation of scholars carried the torch of knowledge and lifted it even higher. This era became known as the Islamic Golden Age, a time when learning was seen as an act of devotion, and the study of the heavens a reflection of gratitude to the Creator who designed them. In the cities of Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo, and Cordoba, the night skies became classrooms. Observatories were built not as symbols of power, but as places of patience. There scholars stood quietly at their instruments, measuring the movement of the stars, the tilt of the earth, and the changing of the seasons. Each observation was a step closer to understanding the precise order of creation. Their work was both scientific and spiritual, a union of reason and reverence. Knowledge was not hoarded, but shared. Scholars translated Greek, Persian, and Indian texts into Arabic, preserving ideas that might otherwise have been lost. Yet, they did not merely copy them, they tested, refined, and corrected. Where ancient models failed, they built new ones. Where mathematics was uncertain, they brought precision. Their goal was not pride, but accuracy. Because truth was seen as a form of worship, the House of Wisdom in Baghdad became the heart of this movement. Within its vast library, translators, mathematicians, and astronomers worked side by side. By candlelight, they compared texts, charted observations, and debated the shape of the heavens. For them, every discovery revealed more about the perfection of Allah's design. To study the universe was to appreciate the signs placed within it. Among the great names of this era was Al-Khwarizmi, whose work in mathematics and astronomy would shape science for centuries. He created methods for calculating planetary positions with precision, and from his name, the word algorithm was born. His ideas helped travelers navigate, builders construct, and astronomers predict celestial events with remarkable accuracy. Through his efforts, calculation became a bridge between the heavens and the earth. Another towering figure was Al-Battani, who improved the measurement of the solar year far beyond earlier calculations. By patiently observing the sun's movement for decades, he refined values that would guide astronomers long after his time. His tables of planetary motion became a foundation for scholars across the world. Each line of data represented years of careful work, each number a testimony to his dedication and respect for order. In Damascus, and later in Moraga, great observatories rose like silent monuments to curiosity. Their walls housed instruments larger than any before: astrolabes, quadrants, and armillary spheres of brass and wood. Through these tools, scholars traced the paths of the planets, recorded eclipses, and mapped the night sky with incredible precision. Their instruments were not just creations of metal, but of patience, born from minds guided by purpose. They knew that the universe was not random. Its motion followed laws set by the Almighty. To measure them was not to claim mastery, but to witness perfection. Each new discovery deepened their awe. The more they understood the movement of the stars, the more they saw evidence of design, of order beyond human reach. Their science became a quiet act of reflection, a blend of intellect and faith. In Cordoba, where the light of knowledge spread through the Western world, scholars studied the heavens while surrounded by gardens, libraries, and mosques. Learning was woven into daily life. Observing the stars was as natural as prayer, an act of contemplation that joined the practical with the spiritual. The city glowed at night, not only with lamps, but with the curiosity of minds searching for truth. The Muslim astronomers brought precision to every detail. They mapped more than 1,000 stars, corrected errors from older civilizations, and introduced new methods for calculation. They refined the astrolabe into a powerful tool that could determine time, direction, and latitude with remarkable accuracy. Travelers could find their way across deserts and seas by instruments born from these minds, guided by their pursuit of clarity and truth. One of the greatest achievements of this era was the building of comprehensive astronomical tables, known as siege. These collections listed the positions of celestial bodies for years ahead, allowing scholars to predict solar and lunar events. They were not tools of fortune-telling, but of timekeeping, navigation, and organization. Through these tables, the study of the sky became a precise science, guided by observation and careful reasoning. Among the brightest names was Al-Zakali from Toledo, whose instruments and tables influenced astronomers even in Europe centuries later. He was known for combining mathematical depth with practical invention, creating models that united theory with observation. His work was a bridge between the heavens above and the world of daily life below. A perfect balance between thought and utility. For these scholars, every discovery carried humility. They often began their writings by acknowledging that all knowledge ultimately belonged to Allah, and that their duty was only to observe faithfully. This mindset kept their science pure, free from arrogance. It reminded them that precision was not about perfection of self, but about appreciating the perfection already placed in creation. In their observatories, nights passed quietly. The air was still, the sound of writing soft as pens moved across parchment. One could imagine the flicker of oil lamps reflecting on brass instruments, the rustle of paper, the gentle turning of gears. It was a world of patience, where time slowed to the rhythm of the stars. Each observation became a prayer of understanding. These astronomers also advanced the understanding of optics, timekeeping, and mechanics. They built the first accurate clocks powered by water and gears, allowing them to measure hours with consistency. This precision helped organize prayer times and daily schedules, showing how science could serve both practical needs and spiritual discipline. Knowledge became a way to bring balance into human life. In the libraries of Baghdad and Samarkand, ideas from many lands converged. Greek geometry met Indian numerals, Persian astronomy met Arab innovation. This blending of cultures created a scientific language that belonged to all humanity. Each scholar built upon the last, proving that knowledge grows when shared, not when guarded. The Islamic Golden Age became a testament to cooperation guided by respect and unity. The pursuit of astronomy during this time was deeply human. It answered practical questions: how to travel, how to measure time, but it also spoke to something greater. The scholars believed that the universe was a book of signs, open for anyone who took the time to read. Every star, every orbit, every law of motion was a verse written by the hand of the Creator. Their science was their reading of that eternal script. Many of these works later reached Europe, translated into Latin, and studied by future generations. Names like Al-Khwarizmi, Al-Battani, and Al-Zarqali became the unseen teachers of later astronomers such as Copernicus. The bridge between ancient and modern science was built by their patience, their calculations, and their humility. Without their preservation of knowledge, much of the ancient world's wisdom would have been lost. For them, the study of the heavens was never separated from moral purpose. They saw that the same precision governing the planets should guide human life steady, thoughtful, and measured. The balance of the cosmos became a mirror for the balance of character. Through astronomy, they learned not only how the world moved, but how to live in harmony within it. And so, under the vast desert sky, the scholars of the Islamic Golden Age turned their eyes upward night after night. They found comfort in the certainty of the stars, peace in their motion, and meaning in their stillness. Their legacy was not only in their discoveries, but in the spirit of their pursuer, reminder that the search for knowledge, when done with sincerity and humility, can become an act of worship. In the centuries that followed, the thirst for knowledge did not fade. Across the lands of Islam, from the deserts of Arabia to the mountains of Persia, scholars continued to look upward. Each generation refined what the last had begun. Observatories grew more advanced, instruments more accurate, and calculations more precise. It was a slow and steady expansion of understanding, built on the foundation of patience and devotion. One of the most remarkable minds of this era was Ibn al-Haytham, known in the West as Al-Hasan. His study of light and optics changed how humanity saw the world literally and intellectually. He proved that vision worked through light entering the eye, not rays leaving it. His experiments laid the groundwork for modern scientific method: observe, test, and verify. He often wrote that truth must be sought with humility, for arrogance blinds the mind more than darkness ever could. At the observatory of Aga, Nasir al-Din al-Tusi developed new models of planetary motion that corrected flaws in Ptolemy's system. His designs introduced geometric tools still used in astronomy today. He imagined how the planets could move in complex paths while still obeying fixed laws, creating harmony between observation and theory. His work would later inspire thinkers in Europe who continued the same search for precision. Another great scholar, Ulugh Beg of Samarkand, built one of the most advanced observatories of the medieval world. His massive instruments allowed him to calculate the length of the year and the tilt of the earth with astonishing accuracy. For decades, he and his team of astronomers observed the heavens each night, refining tables of star positions that would remain unmatched for centuries. His dedication showed that knowledge, when guided by sincerity, can illuminate entire generations. Throughout these centuries, learning was seen as a form of gratitude. To understand creation was to recognize its perfection. Scholars began their writings with praise, acknowledging that all understanding ultimately belonged to Allah. This humility shaped the atmosphere of discovery. It was not a race for fame, but a journey toward clarity. Each page of their manuscripts carried both intellect and reverence. In the quiet hours before dawn, observatories were filled with soft light and patient concentration. The air was cool, the night still, and the scholars worked in silence, except for the sound of writing on parchment. Each stroke of the pen marked the passing of a star, the end of a night's study. Their work required precision, yet it also carried calm. For them, science was not noise, it was serenity. These scholars not only studied the heavens but also taught others to do the same. Schools and libraries grew around observatories, where students learned mathematics, geometry, and astronomy side by side. Knowledge flowed freely across lands, carried by travelers, translated by linguists, and shared through handwritten books. The desire to understand was never confined to one city or one language. It belonged to all who sought truth with sincerity. In cities like Isfahan and Cairo, architectural design began to reflect astronomical understanding. Domes and courtyards were aligned with the movement of the sun and stars. The beauty of symmetry found in the heavens was mirrored in the geometry of buildings. These designs were not only aesthetic, they were reminders that creation itself was built on balance, and that harmony on earth begins with recognizing harmony above. The precision of timekeeping also improved during this golden age. Water clocks, sundials, and later mechanical devices were built with intricate detail. They helped regulate daily life, from market hours to moments of prayer. Through them, the relationship between time and worship became exact, uniting human rhythm with the rhythm of the universe. In every tick and measure, there was a reflection of divine order. In Andalusia, on the western edge of the Islamic world, knowledge continued to flourish. Scholars translated Arabic texts into Latin, carrying them into the heart of Europe. Libraries in Toledo and Cordoba became bridges between civilizations. It was through these translations that the wisdom of the East rekindled the light of learning in the West, paving the way for later scientific revolutions. The influence of these Muslim astronomers was profound. Their observations corrected ancient errors, and their instruments inspired new inventions. They laid the mathematical groundwork for navigation, enabling explorers to cross oceans guided by the stars. Even centuries later, their contributions remained visible in the words we use: algebra, algorithm, and zenithal, born from Arabic roots. Their ideas still guide us each time we measure or calculate, but beyond the equations and inventions, the heart of their work was always the same: reflection. They believed that the heavens were signs of wisdom, not symbols of fate. To study them was to strengthen faith, not weaken it. They saw that the closer one looked at creation, the clearer its perfection became. Their curiosity was an act of gratitude, a form of remembrance carried out through learning. As generations passed, the centers of study slowly shifted. Wars, invasions, and changing empires disrupted the calm pursuit of knowledge. Yet the manuscripts survived, protected in libraries and copied by hand. The light of their discoveries never truly faded. Like starlight traveling through the dark, their knowledge continued its journey across time, reaching new minds long after the observatories had grown silent. When later scientists in Europe began exploring the heavens again, they did so on the shoulders of these Muslim scholars. Copernicus, for example, drew directly from Altusi's models. Tycho Brahe and Kepler used data refined from Islamic star tables. Though the world had changed, the lineage of precision remained. The careful patience of the scholars of Baghdad and Samarkand lived on in every new observation of the sky. This era teaches that knowledge and faith are not opposites, they are companions. The more deeply the scholars studied creation, the more they appreciated its beauty and purpose. For them, there was no conflict between the mind and the soul. Both sought the same thing, truth, and truth, they knew, was not invented, it was discovered, written into the universe from the very beginning. The legacy of the Islamic Golden Age is not only in books or inventions, but in its spirit. It showed the world that learning can be gentle, that precision can be humble, and that the search for truth can be an act of peace. The scholars of this age proved that when knowledge is pursued with sincerity, it connects humanity to something far greater than itself. When night descends over the same deserts they once studied, the stars still shine with the same clarity. The constellations they named still drift quietly above the world. The instruments they built may rest in museums now, but their purpose remains unchanged: to remind us that the universe is ordered, balanced, and full of meaning. In the stillness of that ancient night, one can imagine a scholar stepping out from his observatory, gazing upward after hours of work. The wind brushes across the sand, the lamps burn low, and the stars stretch endlessly overhead. He breathes deeply, his heart calm, knowing that what he sees above is a reflection of the truth within. For him, the study of the heavens was never just knowledge, it was remembrance. And as we look up today, thousands of years later, we are still part of that same lineage of wonder. Every telescope, every calculation, every quiet moment spent watching the stars continues their legacy. The light of that golden age has never gone out. It glows softly in the hearts of those who seek knowledge with patience, and who see in every discovery a sign of the order placed in the heavens by the one who made them. Far across mountains and deserts, beyond the lands of Persia and India, another civilization watched the sky with devotion and precision. In ancient China, the heavens were not just a mystery to admire, they were a record to be preserved. For thousands of years, Chinese scholars observed the movement of stars and planets with care unmatched by any other culture. Their goal was not to predict fate, but to maintain harmony between the heavens and the earth. From the earliest dynasties, astronomy was considered a noble duty. The scholars who studied the stars were not fortune-tellers but officials of time. They kept calendars, tracked eclipses, and ensured that the rhythm of the heavens matched the rhythm of human life. Their task was sacred in its responsibility, for they believed that order on earth depended on understanding the order above. Night after night, generations of observers stood beneath the clear skies of East Asia, noting every flicker of light and every shadow on the moon. They kept their records on silk scrolls and bamboo slips, writing in neat, delicate lines. Their data stretched across centuries, forming one of the longest continuous records of the sky in human history. It was patience in its purest form, a conversation with the heavens that never ended. The Chinese astronomers built their knowledge not on belief, but on observation. They noted that certain stars rose and set in predictable patterns, that the moon followed a monthly cycle, and that the sun's path marked the changing of the seasons. These facts became the foundation of their calendar, guiding agriculture, festivals, and daily life. To them, the heavens were a great clock, crafted with divine precision. As their methods grew more advanced, they began to build instruments of astonishing detail. Giant bronze armillary spheres were placed in observatories, allowing them to track celestial movement with mathematical accuracy. Water clocks measured time with the soft drip of drops, synchronized to the turning of the stars. Their devices were quiet, yet powerful tools of order built to reflect the universe's own discipline. In the Han Dynasty, astronomers kept careful watch for unusual events, comets, new stars, and eclipses. These were not omens to fear, but natural phenomena to understand. They believed that every occurrence in the sky had a reason, even if it was not yet known. Their commitment to record, rather than interpret, made them true scientists long before the modern age. Observation, not imagination, was their path to truth. Centuries of records allowed them to calculate time with extraordinary precision. They measured the length of the year to within minutes of accuracy. They predicted eclipses not through guessing but through mathematics. Their calendars were so consistent that they guided harvests and ceremonies for entire empires. The harmony between heaven and earth was maintained through knowledge, not superstition. Chinese astronomers often worked in teams, each person responsible for a part of the sky. Some watched the northern stars, others the southern horizon. Their observations were combined into great star maps, each one updated carefully as new data arrived. Over time, these maps became masterpieces of precision art and science woven together on silk, their lines as graceful as brushstrokes in a painting. One of their most remarkable achievements was the cataloguing of constellations. While Western astronomy grouped stars into familiar shapes, like bears or hunters, the Chinese saw the sky as a reflection of the world below. Their constellations represented cities, rivers, and even government offices. The heavens, they believed, mirrored the structure of human life. To understand the sky was to understand the pattern of harmony that guided creation. They recorded not only the stars, but also the changes that appeared among them. Supernova, for instance, were documented as guest stars, bright points that appeared suddenly and faded after months. Modern astronomers still use these ancient Chinese records to confirm stellar events that occurred more than 1,000 years ago. Their precision became a bridge between ancient observation and modern science. The observatories themselves were marvels of engineering. Towers were built high above city walls, equipped with instruments of bronze and wood. Scholars climbed them each night, marking measurements with lanterns and ink. From these towers, the empire's time was set. The entire calendar of a nation depended on the steady eyes of those who watched the sky in silence. Their work was deeply practical. The farmers needed accurate calendars to plant and harvest at the right time. Builders used the stars to align new cities, ensuring their streets and walls faced proper directions. Even musicians relied on astronomy, for the Chinese believed that true harmony in sound was linked to harmony in the cosmos. In every part of life, the heavens provided a rhythm to follow. The records they left behind form a continuous chain, reaching back more than 4,000 years. No other civilization kept such detailed accounts of the sky for so long. These records described thousands of eclipses, comets, and planetary motions with accuracy that astonishes modern scientists. Through them, humanity gained one of its most complete windows into the past behavior of the heavens. Chinese scholars treated knowledge as a shared duty rather than a personal achievement. The great astronomers worked for the good of their people, not for fame. Their findings were submitted to the royal court, where they shaped calendars and guided public works. The accuracy of their measurements was a sign of stability and trust. To keep time correctly was to preserve the balance of the world. Even the emperors respected this discipline. Many rulers personally supported the building of observatories and the training of new astronomers. They understood that the peace of their kingdoms depended on reliable calendars and well-timed harvests. In this way, science became a part of governance, a bridge between knowledge and responsibility. Instruments improved with each dynasty. By the Song era, mechanical armillary spheres could be turned by water power, rotating in sync with the stars. Complex gear systems kept track of celestial time even when the skies were cloudy. These machines reflected both craftsmanship and faith in order, the belief that precision was a form of respect for the structure of the universe. Night after night, the Chinese observers continued their watch. The stillness of their labor mirrored the stillness of the stars. They wrote in quiet, with the patience of those who understood that time itself was their partner. No discovery came quickly, but none was lost. Their legacy was built not on flashes of genius, but on generations of endurance. Through centuries of change, their methods remained consistent. Dynasties rose and fell, cities flourished and faded, yet the star watchers remained. Their observatories might crumble, but new ones were built in their place. The work never stopped. It was as though the heavens had appointed humanity as their keepers, tasked with remembering what the stars could not record for themselves. Their commitment to truth gave the world one of its purest examples of scientific perseverance. While other civilizations sometimes lost their records to war or time, the Chinese kept theirs safe, copied and recopied, through peace and hardship alike. In their patience, we see the quiet strength of humanity's long dialogue with creation, a dialogue written not in words, but in light. And as each dawn broke across the tiled roofs of their cities, the astronomers laid down their brushes and closed their scrolls. The stars would return that night, as they always had. The rhythm continued steady, timeless, and certain. For them, this was the great reassurance that the same heavens that guided their ancestors would guide their descendants, too. The order above was eternal, and in that order they found peace. The depth of China's astronomical tradition came not only from its length but from its consistency. Generation after generation, scholars built upon the work of those before them. They trusted observation more than theory, believing that patience revealed truth better than speculation. Each new astronomer began his career by studying ancient records, comparing the stars he saw with the notes of his ancestors. It was a chain of knowledge, unbroken across millennia. This devotion produced discoveries that reached far beyond their time. Long before telescopes, Chinese observers noted sunspots, dark markings on the face of the sun seen through the morning mist. They described them carefully, unaware that centuries later scientists would confirm their nature as solar storms. Their notes, written by steady hands on silk, preserved one of the oldest continuous records of the sun's activity in human history. They also understood the mathematics of the heavens with extraordinary precision. The division of the circle into 360 degrees, the careful counting of lunar cycles, and the refinement of calendars all reflected a deep respect for structure. Time itself became something sacred, measured and honored. To lose accuracy was not merely an error, was a disruption of balance, something to be corrected with humility and care. In imperial courts, the office of the astronomer was one of great trust. His duty was to measure time for the empire, to ensure that festivals, plantings, and ceremonies aligned with the natural order. When he spoke, even rulers listened. It was a role that combined science and responsibility, a reminder that leadership required alignment with truth, not control over it. The astronomer's quiet precision became a symbol of integrity. One of the most influential figures in this long tradition was Zhong Heng, a scholar of the 2nd century. He built detailed celestial models that demonstrated the movement of the heavens. His rotating sphere showed how the stars revolved around the Earth, and his water-powered devices measured time with gentle accuracy. Though his instruments have long been lost, his writings remain testimony to a mind that sought not glory, but understanding. As the centuries passed, Chinese astronomy continued to evolve. During the Tang dynasty, observatories became official institutions, equipped with libraries, instruments, and staffs of mathematicians. Scholars from across Asia visited to share knowledge, bringing ideas from India and the Islamic world. The exchange of wisdom enriched both sides, showing that science transcends borders and languages. Knowledge was not owned, it was shared. The Song dynasty saw even greater advancements. Shen Kuo, a brilliant polymath, wrote detailed observations of the moon and stars, and even described the concept of true north using magnetic compasses. He believed that understanding the natural world was a form of virtue, a way to align one's thoughts with the order of creation. His writings blended science and reflection, treating discovery as both practical and spiritual progress. By this time, Chinese star maps had reached incredible detail. They depicted thousands of stars, with relative positions and magnitudes accurately recorded. These maps were not decorative, they were tools for navigation, agriculture, and education. Their beauty lay in their precision, their artistry in their accuracy. Each point of light was placed with care, a visual record of centuries of human attention. The tradition of accurate recording continued through dynasties of change. New instruments were added, and old ones repaired. Scholars calibrated clocks, measured the length of shadows, and rarefied the alignment of meridians. No task was too small, no observation too repetitive. Their work was sustained by the belief that patience was the highest form of discipline. To watch the sky faithfully was to serve truth itself. Even as wars and upheavals swept across the land, astronomy remained a quiet constant. Libraries might burn, rulers might change, but the stars continued their paths. The astronomers, often unnoticed by history, carried on their watch. They were not driven by ambition or reward. Their satisfaction came from knowing that each night of careful study brought humanity closer to understanding the precision of creation. Their observatories became sanctuaries of peace. While the world below moved with noise and urgency, the heights where they worked remained still. In that stillness, they found clarity. The slow movement of the stars reminded them that time, though relentless, was also gentle. The heavens did not hurry, and neither did they. This harmony between patience and purpose gave their work its timeless grace. Some of their most remarkable achievements came through collaboration. Teams of scholars worked together for decades, comparing results, refining numbers, and correcting small discrepancies. They understood that truth was built through cooperation. A single observer could make an error, but a group working in unity could find perfection. This collective effort reflected not only scientific precision but moral harmony, a recognition that knowledge grows best in peace. Their understanding of the heavens also influenced art and philosophy. Poets compared the stability of the stars to the steadiness of character. Painters depicted the moon and constellations as symbols of reflection and endurance. The same balance that guided their measurements appeared in their literature, their gardens, and even their music. The universe was not distant, it was woven into daily life. Through these centuries, one idea remained constant, that studying the sky was not an escape from Earth, but a guide to living upon it. The heavens were seen as a mirror of divine order, and by understanding them, people could bring order into their own lives. This belief connected science with morality, reminding scholars that knowledge was not only for the mind, but also for the heart. When European astronomers later arrived in China, they were astonished by what they found. The Chinese had recorded celestial events stretching back thousands of years, with detail unmatched anywhere else. Their calendars were consistent, their measurements precise, their archives vast. The visitors realized that the pursuit of astronomy here had never been about discovery alone, it had been about devotion to order. Even today, historians and scientists still rely on these records. They help date ancient eclipses, confirm supernova, and refine modern models of the Earth's rotation. The patience of those long-gone scholars continues to illuminate our understanding of time. Their legacy reminds us that no act of careful observation is ever lost. It travels forward, like starlight crossing centuries, to reach new eyes. To imagine those early astronomers is to picture serenity, standing on high towers, wrapped in robes against the night air. They looked up, not with restlessness, but with calm. Their eyes traced familiar paths across the darkness, their minds steady and focused. In that quiet act of watching, they found meaning. The universe was not something to conquer, it was something to listen to. Their story is not of miracles or sudden revelations, but of endurance. They showed that truth does not shout. It whispers to those who wait. Their faith in order, their devotion to precision, and their refusal to rush made their science a form of patience. In this way, they reflected the very heavens they studied, constant, measured, and full of quiet grace. And so, as the stars fade over the eastern horizon and morning light begins to touch the towers, the astronomers close their scrolls and rest. Their work is done for the night, but their legacy continues. The same sun that rises over their observatories now rises over ours, warming the same earth, marking the same passage of time. The heavens remain unchanged, and through their steadiness, we remember that peace often lies in simply paying attention. In the silence between night and dawn, the long dialogue between humanity and the sky continues. The Chinese astronomers taught the world that patience and knowledge are one and the same, that to measure creation is to appreciate it. Their records, stretching through centuries, remain among the most enduring symbols of human dedication. And as the light of morning returns, their lesson remains clear. The stars may vanish with the dawn, but their truth never fades. Across the oceans, far from the valleys of China and the deserts of Arabia, another chapter of humanity's story unfolded. In the ancient Americas, long before telescopes or written alphabets, people built civilizations that rose and fell beneath the same stars. They too watched the heavens, tracing its rhythms in silence. From their observations came temples, calendars, and monuments that still stand as whispers of their precision and patience. The people of Mesoamerica, the Maya, the Aztec, and their ancestors believed that the world moved in cycles. They saw time as a wheel, not a line, turning endlessly through patterns of light and shadow. But their study of the heavens was not based on myth, it was rooted in observation. They noted how the sun reached its highest point twice each year, how Venus disappeared and returned, and how the moon shaped the tides and the crops. Their knowledge was deep, practical, and remarkably scientific. The Maya, in particular, became masters of celestial measurement. In the forests of what is now southern Mexico and Guatemala, they built stone cities that aligned perfectly with the rising and setting of the sun. Their temples were not only places of gathering, they were observatories carved from rock. Through small openings, sunlight would enter on specific days, marking solstices and equinoxes with breathtaking accuracy. To them, these alignments were not superstition, but order made visible. The light of the sun passing through stone was proof that creation followed laws, not chance. The builders measured shadows, traced the paths of stars, and recorded their findings in codices written with delicate strokes. Their calendars rivaled any others in precision, connecting agriculture, ceremony, and timekeeping into a single, harmonious design. At the city of Chichén Itzá, the Great Pyramid, known as El Castillo, stands as a perfect example of this harmony. During the equinox, sunlight strikes its staircase in such a way that shadows resemble the body of a serpent gliding downward. The spectacle lasts only moments, yet it occurs with mathematical certainty each year. It was not a display of magic, but of geometry and astronomical understanding. Stone became a canvas for light. The Inca of South America, far to the south, shared a similar devotion to the heavens. Living high in the Andes, they built cities like Cusco and Machu Picchu with structures aligned to the movement of the sun and stars. Their temples framed the horizon so that the rising sun on solstice mornings fell exactly between mountain peaks. The landscape itself became part of their observatory, a living instrument built from earth and sky. Their calendar was guided by the sun's motion and the phases of the moon. They marked the times for planting and harvest by watching shadows shorten and lengthen along stone walls. To live in those mountains was to live close to the heavens, and they treated that closeness with respect. They measured the world not in haste, but in rhythm with the slow certainty of nature. In both North and South America, astronomy was never separate from daily life. Farmers relied on the stars to know when to sow and when to rest. Travelers followed constellations across deserts and jungles, their routes written in the night sky. The heavens were not distant, they were woven into survival. The same lights that guided philosophers in Greece and scholars in Baghdad also guided shepherds in the Andes and builders in the Yucatan. Each observation, each monument, carried generations of accumulated wisdom. The Mayas' long count calendar, spanning thousands of years, showed an understanding of celestial cycles far beyond their era. They knew the length of the solar year with incredible precision, and they tracked the orbit of Venus more accurately than any other civilization of their time. Such detail came not from superstition, but from patient study passed down through centuries. Their builders turned knowledge into art. Pyramids and temples aligned with cardinal directions, doorways pointed toward constellations, and plazas opened to the path of the sun. Each design choice served a purpose to reflect the perfection of the sky above. The result was architecture that breathed with the rhythm of light, a balance between human intention and divine order. As the centuries passed, this harmony continued. The Aztec inherited much of the Mayas' astronomical knowledge, refining it to fit their own needs. They developed a dual calendar system, one for daily life and one for ritual use, both synchronized with the movements of the sun and planets. Their precision in timekeeping allowed them to plan years ahead, ensuring stability in crops and festivals alike. To them, time was not something to be conquered, but something to understand. Each day carried meaning, each season its role in the greater order. By studying the heavens, they learned that life itself followed the same rhythm: growth, decline, and renewal. Their astronomy was not a system of belief, but a philosophy of patience and respect for creation's balance. In the high plateaus of Peru, the Nazca people expressed their understanding of the sky in another way. They drew enormous lines and shapes across the desert figures that could only be fully seen from above. Some align with the positions of the sun during solstices, others point to bright stars on the horizon. These geoglyphs remain mysterious, but their alignment with celestial events reveals careful planning guided by long observation. The connection between sky and stone was universal. Across the Americas, from the deserts of Mexico to the valleys of the Andes, people learned to read time not from clocks, but from shadows. They turned mountains into markers, sunlight into measure, and stars into teachers. The entire landscape became an instrument of knowledge, a place where heaven and earth met in quiet precision. In every civilization, astronomy required discipline. The work demanded patience through long nights, careful measurements, and years of recording. It was not the work of mystics, but of scientists before the word existed. Their understanding came from experience, the slow accumulation of truth through observation and comparison. Theirs was a science of silence and attention. The Maya, Inca, and Aztec may have built differently, spoken differently, and lived in separate worlds, but their purpose was the same. They sought to understand the rhythm of creation. Their observatories, calendars, and temples were expressions of gratitude toward that rhythm. In their careful alignment of stones, they honored the precision they saw above. Even after their cities fell silent, their knowledge endured. The stars they charted still shine in the same positions. The sunlight still touches their temples at the appointed moments. Their discoveries did not fade. They remained carved into the earth, preserved by the very cycles they studied. The heavens continued their motion, keeping faith with those who had once watched them so closely. When we look upon their ruins today, what we see is not superstition, but science in its earliest and most beautiful form. We see minds that observed, built, and measured with respect. We see a partnership between humanity and the universe, written in shadow and light. Their monuments stand not as mysteries, but as reminders of how deeply people once listened to the quiet order of creation. And as the stars rose each night above those ancient lands, the same feeling must have filled their hearts, the peace of knowing that the universe was steady, that time had purpose, and that life on earth followed the same sacred rhythm as the heavens above. As centuries passed, the relationship between sky and stone only deepened. New generations built upon the work of those before them, adding refinement to their calendars and structures. Each monument became a conversation across time, a dialogue between architects, farmers, and astronomers who never met, yet shared the same purpose. They were united by observation, by patience, and by faith in the consistency of the heavens. Many of their temples were designed not only to track the sun, but also the moon and planets. Narrow corridors allowed moonlight to enter at precise intervals, casting patterns that marked the passing months. Builders calculated these angles with astonishing skill, aligning them so carefully that the light still falls exactly where it was meant to after hundreds of years. Through stone and shadow, they measured the invisible movements of time. In the Yucatan, the observatory at Uxmal still stands as a symbol of that precision. Its circular design, rare among ancient structures, allowed wide views of the horizon. From its windows, observers could track Venus, one of the most studied celestial bodies in Mesoamerican astronomy. They charted its cycles not as prophecy, but as proof of order. Believing that the harmony of the skies was reflected in the harmony of life on Earth, the careful watching of Venus connected their calendars to the seasons of rain and drought. When the bright planet appeared before dawn, it signaled a shift in the agricultural year. This knowledge helped farmers prepare their fields at the right moment, preserving balance between human work and nature's rhythm. The same stars that adorned the night sky also determined when families ate, rested, and rejoiced. Farther south, the Inca used their mountain landscape as part of their astronomical system. They identified natural features along the horizon, peaks, ridges, and valleys as markers for the sun's movement. When light touched a certain mountain at sunrise, it announced the coming of a new season. The people didn't build over the land, they built with it. Every part of nature had purpose, every shadow meaning. At Machu Picchu, the Intihuatana stone still captures this idea perfectly. Its carved edges align with the sun's position during solstices and equinoxes. On those days, its shadow nearly disappears at noon, as if time itself stands still for a moment. It was not an altar for worship, but an instrument of alignment, a physical expression of the idea that knowledge and creation are connected. The builders understood geometry in ways that remain astonishing today. Without modern tools, they measured angles, distances, and alignments that would challenge even engineers of the present. They learned through repetition, by marking, observing, and adjusting over generations. In this, they demonstrated one of humanity's most profound truths, that patience is often the greatest technology. As their societies grew more complex, their astronomical systems grew more integrated with daily life. Festivals were timed to the phases of the moon. Trade journeys followed the stars. Construction began only during certain celestial alignments. The heavens provided not only order, but meaning, a rhythm that gave structure to human existence. Time was no longer abstract. It was visible, moving across stone and sky. The cities they built reflected this unity. Streets were often laid in cardinal directions, connecting temples to celestial markers. Public squares opened toward the sunrise. In some places, water channels mirrored the pattern of constellations above, turning architecture into reflection. The result was a living map of the cosmos, where people walked among symbols of time without even realizing it. Their calendars, carved into stone or painted on codices, were masterpieces of mathematics. Some tracked solar years with precision comparable to modern systems. Others combined lunar and solar cycles into complex but accurate structures. These calendars were not designed for mysticism. They were tools of governance and agriculture. Through them, rulers organized planting, taxes, and construction, guided by the steady motion of the heavens. Even their stories carried traces of astronomy. Myths and legends were used as teaching tools, helping children remember which stars appeared in which season. A hunter might represent a constellation that rose in spring. A bird, one that faded in autumn. These tales preserved practical knowledge through gentle memory. The line between science and story was thin, because both served the same purpose: to remember. When European explorers later encountered the ruins of these civilizations, many were astonished by their accuracy. They could not imagine how such knowledge had been achieved without modern instruments. Yet the secret was simple: it was patience. Night after night, year after year, the observers of these lands watched, recorded, and trusted what they saw. Truth revealed itself to those who waited long enough to see its pattern. Some of the knowledge was lost with the fall of these civilizations, but not all. The stones remain perfectly aligned with the sun and stars. The measurements still hold. Modern researchers use laser instruments and computer models only to confirm what was already known centuries ago. The builders of the Americas understood the language of light long before anyone gave it a name. What made their achievements remarkable was not just accuracy, but humility. They saw themselves as part of the pattern they measured. To them, the sun did not rise for human glory, it rose because the Creator had set it so. The people's role was to observe, to learn, and to live in harmony with that divine order. Knowledge was not a possession, it was a responsibility. Their quiet devotion to observation shaped more than monuments, it shaped a worldview. It taught them that creation moves in circles, that time is generous, and that every season returns. It gave comfort in uncertainty and hope in hardship. When crops failed or rains delayed, they looked to the sky not for control, but for reassurance. The stars told them that all things, in time, find balance again. Their legacy endures in ways both visible and invisible. The ancient cities remain, their alignments precise as ever. But more than that, their philosophy of patience and observation continues to echo through modern science. Every astronomer who studies the heavens follows the same practice. They began looking, recording, and trusting in order. The difference is only in tools, not in spirit. It is humbling to imagine them standing beneath the same constellations we see tonight. Their tools were simple strings, stones, and shadows, but their hearts were filled with the same curiosity that still drives us. They saw in the sky not distance, but connection. Each star was a reminder of stability, each sunrise a promise that creation remains in perfect rhythm. As night deepened over their cities, fires burned softly on the terraces. Families would pause from their work, gaze upward, and find comfort in the same lights their ancestors had followed. The heavens above, steady and calm, reflected the peace they sought below. Their world may have been carved from stone, but its foundation was written in the stars. And when morning finally came, sunlight spilled once again across their temples and fields. The alignment was perfect, as it had always been. The earth turned, the stars moved, and the people rose to meet another day in harmony with the great design. Sky and stone, earth and light, all working together in timeless rhythm, a silent testament to humanity's endless conversation with the heavens. Across the vast timeline of history, every civilization, no matter how distant or different, has shared one quiet act, the simple gesture of looking up. Whether in the deserts of Arabia, the forests of Mesoamerica, or the river valleys of China, people have always turned their eyes to the night sky. Before the invention of words or maps, humanity found its first shared language written in light. In every corner of the world, the stars have been witnesses. They looked down upon shepherds guiding their flocks, sailors steering across dark waters, and scholars recording their movements with ink and patience. The constellations changed names, but their patterns never shifted. To one person they were guides, to another a mystery, yet to all they were reminders that there was order beyond the reach of human hands. When early humans began to connect those points of light into shapes, they were not trying to explain everything, they were trying to remember. The stars became a way to hold stories, to mark seasons, to measure the rhythm of the world. Those stories carried knowledge, helping people live with the land and with each other. Through them, memory found a home in the sky. Thousands of years later, that same impulse remained. Egyptian scribes drew stars on tomb ceilings to symbolize eternity. Chinese astronomers recorded eclipses in their ledgers. Greek philosophers mapped circles and orbits. Muslim scholars built observatories that reached toward the horizon. None of them saw the same landscape, yet all of them were watching the same heavens. It is humbling to realize how much connects us through time. We build walls, languages, and borders, but the stars have no need for these divisions. Their light falls evenly across the earth, on mountains, on oceans, on every village and city alike. The same constellations that once shone above Babylon now shine above our rooftops. In their stillness, they remind us that the sky belongs to everyone. The shared gaze of humanity is not just about science or measurement. It is about a feeling, the calm awareness that the universe is vast, ordered, and steady. Long before technology, people learned to find peace in that awareness. The night sky gave them something that no tool could provide: perspective. It reminded them that life, in all its change, unfolds within something greater and unshakable. Each culture saw the heavens through its own lens, yet the core remained the same. The stars were not objects of worship, but signs of consistency and care. The Chinese saw harmony, the Greeks saw geometry. The scholars of the Islamic world saw reflection of divine design. The Maya saw time flowing in circles. Every culture found truth in observation and peace in its patience. If you imagine the world thousands of years ago, there were no streetlights or screens to dim the view. The sky stretched from horizon to horizon, alive with light. The Milky Way glowed like a soft river across the darkness. In that vastness, even the smallest observer felt connected to something infinite. The act of looking up became an act of reflection, a moment where thought and creation met in silence. To the traveler crossing open lands, the stars were direction. To the farmer waiting for rain, they were a promise. To the scholar, they were a code of order waiting to be understood. Yet for all their uses, the stars never asked for more than attention. They taught patience, and patience taught wisdom. Those who studied them learned that the universe revealed itself to those who watched gently, not forcefully. Through the centuries, this shared gaze shaped not only science, but philosophy and faith. Observing the heavens taught humility, understanding that humanity is small, yet cared for. Every dawn that followed a night of study reminded people that creation moves with precision, not accident. This realization brought peace, even when life below was uncertain. The sky was a reminder that stability still existed somewhere. At night, when the air cooled and noise fell away, people found solace in the sky's quiet rhythm. It was the same rhythm that guided the tides, the seasons, and the beating of the heart. The connection was not just visual, it was emotional, almost spiritual. The stars spoke of constancy, the moon of renewal, and the sun of return. Each movement carried meaning beyond words. Imagine a night thousands of years ago, a shepherd in a quiet field, a scholar on a rooftop, a traveler resting by his fire. Each of them looks upward, seeing the same points of light. They may never meet, never share a language, but in that moment they are joined. The same creation reflects above them all, steady and unchanged. Time separates them, but the sky unites them. The heavens have always been both mirror and map. They show direction to those who wander, and reflection to those who wonder. When we look up today, we are continuing an unbroken human tradition that began long before memory. Each gaze upward is a quiet continuation of every gaze before it, a thread of connection stretching through the centuries. In many ways, this connection defines what it means to be human. To observe, to question, to feel, all these are not inventions of science, but qualities of the soul. They draw us toward truth, reminding us that curiosity itself is part of our design. The stars have no speech, yet they speak clearly to every generation that takes the time to listen. Even as civilizations rose and fell, this dialogue between humanity and the heavens never stopped. The instruments changed, the languages changed, but the wonder remained. The astronomers of Samarkand and the builders of Machu Picchu shared the same silence of discovery. They stood beneath different skies, yet both understood that the light above was a constant presence of order. The stars taught discipline without words. They showed that even in darkness there is structure. They taught patience without sound. Their slow movement proved that progress does not always come from speed, but from steadiness. And they taught humility, that all knowledge, no matter how advanced, is only a glimpse of a far greater truth. When people learned to chart the skies, they also learned to chart themselves. They began to see the patterns of their own lives reflected in the cycles of night and day, growth and rest. The heavens were not distant, they were a quiet teacher, reminding humanity that peace comes from rhythm, and rhythm from understanding. The shared human gaze, across cultures and centuries, shows how deeply knowledge and reflection are connected. Science begins with attention, and attention begins with stillness. The night sky has always offered both a vastness to observe and a calmness to feel. Through it, people found a sense of belonging, not to one place or time, but to the whole story of creation. And as you picture those countless generations looking upward, you might notice something gentle. None of them ever truly looked alone. Every eye that turned toward the stars became part of a single, silent community, a chain of observers connected not by space, but by wonder. It is a tradition that continues each night, wherever the sky remains clear. If one could look through time instead of space, they would see the same scene repeating endlessly, people standing beneath the sky, watching. From deserts to mountains, From the walls of cities to the decks of ships, humanity has always paused to look upward. It is one of the few acts that unites every generation, unchanged by distance or culture. The same stars that guided the earliest travelers still shine above us, patient and unchanged. Those first observers left no monuments to themselves, only quiet legacies of attention. A carved line in stone, a mark on a pot, a pattern traced in sand, these were the first steps toward understanding. Their records may seem small, but they carried the same curiosity that drives great observatories today. The method has evolved, but the purpose remains: to learn from what has been created. Over time, the tools grew sharper, the measurements more exact, yet the heart of the work stayed simple. To look up, to ask, to record, and to reflect. That rhythm links the shepherds of the past with the astronomers of the present. It connects wonder to wisdom. The stars do not need us to study them, but in studying them, we find ourselves. This shared act of observation reveals something beautiful about humanity's nature. We are drawn to seek meaning in what is vast, to find order where our eyes meet the unknown. The night sky offers both mystery and reassurance. It shows that creation is immense, yet consistent, that change happens within harmony. For many, this realization brings peace, a calm sense of belonging within the grand design. The stars also remind us of continuity. Every generation inherits the same sky, the same rhythm of day and night, the same steady rising of the sun. Empires fall, languages vanish, and inventions grow obsolete, but the heavens remain faithful. Their unbroken rhythm teaches us that even in times of chaos, the order of creation endures. When people gather to observe the night sky, they often fall silent without meaning to. The quiet is natural. The sight itself humbles the mind. Words fade because the experience speaks for itself, kind of stillness that transcends explanation. It is the same silence that must have filled the minds of early astronomers as they pressed marks into clay or carved calendars into stone. The sky also carries memory. The light from distant stars travels for thousands of years before reaching our eyes. What we see each night is history itself, message sent across time. In this way, the heavens preserve not only their own story, but ours. They remind us that every observation we make joins a chain of light stretching backward and forward through eternity. Each civilization saw that connection in its own way, but all understood its importance. The Chinese turned it into records of precision, the Greeks into geometry, the Muslim scholars into refined mathematics, and the peoples of the Americas into monuments of alignment. Different paths, same destination, a quiet recognition that the heavens are a language written for those who take time to read it. Even as science advanced and technology replaced the human eye with instruments of glass and metal, the essence did not change. The astronomer looking through a telescope today feels the same wonder as the observer with a naked eye millennia ago. The more we see, the more we understand how vast creation is, and how small yet significant our place within it remains. To look up at night is to remember humility. The stars reveal both the scale of the universe and the precision within it. They remind us that every orbit, every light, every motion is governed by perfect balance. And within that balance lies reassurance that nothing is without purpose, that the same order shaping the cosmos also shapes the quiet turns of our own lives. For many, this realization becomes a form of reflection. It doesn't require temples or ceremonies, only time and awareness. When one pauses to see how the moon changes or how the dawn returns each day, they are witnessing a pattern older than history itself. The act of noticing becomes an act of gratitude. It is a small way to remember that everything we rely on, the warmth of the sun, the flow of seasons, comes from that same precise design. Throughout history, this gaze has offered comfort in hardship. Sailors found direction when all else was dark. Farmers found hope in the promise of spring stars rising again. Even in times of uncertainty, the heavens whispered stability. The stars did not speak, yet their silence carried meaning. Be patient, the pattern will return. When storms raged or nights grew long, the sky remained the same above the clouds. This consistency became a symbol of endurance. People learned from it, finding courage to endure their own seasons of change. The heavens were a mirror for human life, showing that rest follows struggle. Dawn follows night, and order follows confusion. In this way, the shared gaze of humanity was not just about the stars themselves, but about what they taught. They taught us to measure, to think, to reflect, and to wait. They turned curiosity into discipline, and discipline into wisdom. Each night of study was a lesson in patience and faith in the order of creation. It is remarkable how much of human progress began with simply looking up. Calendars, navigation, architecture, and even the concept of time itself grew from this act. The stars became the first teachers of civilization, silent yet constant. They shaped our sense of structure and our longing for understanding. In their stillness, people found meaning. The night sky offered balance between mystery and clarity. It showed that knowledge begins not with answers but with questions. The heavens never spoke, yet they invited thought. They guided explorers to new lands, scholars to new theories, and poets to new words. Their message was always the same: observe, and you will understand. Even now, in our age of bright cities and distant satellites, that same invitation remains. We can still find peace in watching the slow turn of the stars, the soft glow of the moon, the quiet arrival of dawn. These moments are reminders that technology may change how we look, but not why we look. Curiosity is timeless. Wonder never ages. The act of looking up connects us not only to history, but to one another. It reminds us that we are part of something shared, something continuous. When you look at the night sky, you are participating in a human tradition older than civilization itself, a moment of stillness that unites all who have ever paused to breathe beneath the stars. And perhaps, in that quiet moment, you realize what those before us also understood: that the sky does not belong to one people or one era. It belongs to everyone who has ever lived, and everyone who ever will. It is the great meeting place of humanity, reflection of unity written in light. And in its vast silence, it reminds us gently that though we live in different times and places, we have always been looking at the same heavens together. Tonight, when you step outside and look up, the sky you see is the same one our ancestors once watched in silence. The same stars they traced with stories, the same moon that guided travelers and marked the rhythm of seasons. Thousands of years have passed, yet the heavens remain constant. The world below has changed beyond recognition, but the pattern above has never wavered. It is still there, quiet, steady, waiting to be noticed. Our tools are different now. We no longer rely on clay tablets or carved stones, but on telescopes, satellites, and digital screens. We explore the sky not only with our eyes, but with instruments that can see farther than anyone ever imagined. Yet for all our progress, the feeling remains the same. The first spark of wonder that touched the hearts of ancient observers still lives within us. Even the largest observatories, filled with machines and data, are still places of silence. Scientists wait for light that has traveled for billions of years, watching the same patterns repeat in distant galaxies. They use mathematics and reason to describe the order they find, yet beneath it all lies the same awe that has always guided humanity. Knowledge and wonder remain companions, not opposites. Technology has changed how we see the universe, but not why we look at it. The stars remind us of our beginnings. They connect the most advanced laboratory to the simplest human question. How does creation hold itself together with such harmony? The deeper we look, the more we realize that every discovery reveals not chaos, but balance. Even at its most distant, the universe reflects order. In the quiet of modern nights, far from city lights, the sky still holds its old power. To stand beneath it is to feel time slow. The noise of life fades, replaced by something eternal. The stars seem almost alive in their stillness, whispering the same message that guided the ancients. Be patient, be humble, observe, and learn. The universe does not rush, and neither should we. For many, looking at the night sky is no longer a scientific act, but a form of calm. It has become a reminder to breathe, to remember how small and precious we are. The same awareness that led the first astronomers to map the heavens now helps us find peace in our restless world. The sky has always been a mirror, showing us both the vastness around us and the quiet within. The moon still rises, unchanged. Its light crosses oceans and cities, shining on rooftops, deserts, and forests alike. People in every country see it, though they call it by different names. It is one of the few sights that belongs to everyone. When you look at it, you are sharing a moment with every generation that has ever lived, a silent bridge between the living and the remembered. Even in our era of artificial lights and crowded skies, moments of true darkness still exist. In remote places, the Milky Way stretches overhead in a river of silver light, just as it did thousands of years ago. Those who see it often describe a strange feeling, not fear, but serenity. It's as if the sky is speaking, not through words, but through its perfection. Modern astronomy, for all its complexity, continues the same search that began in ancient times, to understand the laws that hold the heavens in place. We now know more about the universe than ever before, its galaxies, its stars, its age. Yet the more we learn, the more we recognize how vast it truly is. Knowledge has not lessened the mystery, it has deepened it. This balance between discovery and humility defines our relationship with the sky. We explore not to conquer, but to understand. We measure and calculate, but we also pause and reflect. Science gives us detail, wonder gives us meaning. Both are needed, just as the ancients once balanced observation with reflection, turning curiosity into wisdom. Our modern calendars, clocks, and technologies may seem far removed from ancient methods, yet they all trace their roots to the same idea, the rhythm of creation. Every second we measure, every orbit we calculate, every satellite that circles the Earth continues a story written in starlight long before humanity began. The modern world rests upon the same ancient heartbeat. Sometimes, in quiet moments, we rediscover that connection. A child looking through a telescope feels the same wonder a Babylonian scribe once felt, seeing the moon through a gap in the clouds. A traveler gazing at the North Star feels the same reassurance a sailor did centuries ago. The distance between past and present disappears. The experience is timeless. Even the astronauts who have left the Earth speak of this feeling. Looking back at the planet from space, they describe not power, but tenderness. The Earth appears small, delicate, and full of life, a blue light in a sea of black. From that perspective, everything we argue about seems temporary, while the beauty of creation appears eternal. They, too, find peace in that view. We often think of progress as a journey upward, from ground to sky, from ignorance to knowledge. Yet the truth may be simpler. The sky was never distant. It was always around us. We didn't reach it through machines. We rediscovered it through awareness. The universe invites us not to look farther, but to look deeper, to see meaning in what has always been before our eyes. In the end, our relationship with the heavens is not about answers, but about reflection. The ancients studied the stars to align their lives with order. We study them now to remember that order still exists. Whether through instruments or imagination, every observation brings the same quiet realization that everything moves according to balance. And within that balance lies peace. Modern life often moves too quickly to notice the sky. Yet even above our cities, the stars still shine through faintly. They have not gone, only our attention has drifted. If we pause long enough, if we turn off the noise for a moment, we can still see what the ancients saw, a reminder that the same creator who designed the stars also designed the calm within us. The sky asks for nothing and gives everything. It offers perspective when we are lost, rhythm when we are tired, and beauty when we forget to look for it. Its silence is not emptiness, but presence, a space for thought, reflection, and gratitude. In that stillness, we find something ancient within our modern hearts, peace in the face of infinity, and perhaps that is why the night sky continues to draw us, not because it changes, but because it stays. It reminds us of what endures order, patience, and quiet wonder. The stars have never needed our attention, yet they continue to offer it freely, glowing softly above us as they always have, waiting for us to look up once more. So, tonight, if you find yourself unable to sleep, you might take a moment to step outside or simply imagine the night sky. Think of the countless generations who have done the same, those who watched with questions, and those who watched with peace. The sky has seen them all. It sees us still, and in its light, our smallness becomes something beautiful, not insignificance, but belonging. The stars will continue to shine long after we are gone, but the wonder they inspire will never fade. For as long as humanity exists, we will keep looking upward, searching for meaning in that endless sea of calm. The night sky may be old, but the heart that loves it remains the same, ancient, gentle, and full of quiet gratitude. The story of the stars is, in truth, the story of us. From the first marks on stone to the most advanced telescopes, every step in our search has been guided by the same quiet instinct to understand the world we live in and to find calm within its vastness. Each generation has added its own voice to that silence, not replacing the old, but joining it. Together, they form a chorus of observation that still echoes softly through time. Even now, as we move through our modern lives, surrounded by screens and sound, the sky continues above us, untouched by our distractions. It waits patiently for our attention, unchanged and generous. All it asks is that we pause long enough to notice. When we do, we find that nothing essential has been lost. The same peace that once filled the hearts of those ancient observers can still fill ours. In that quiet awareness, the distance between past and present disappears. The shepherd with his flock, the scholar with his ink, the sailor with his compass, the astronomer with her lens, all of them share the same small gesture, the upward glance. Each time we look to the heavens, we join them, becoming part of a human story that has never ended. The sky has seen our beginnings, our progress, and our mistakes. It has watched our cities rise and fade, our inventions grow and change. Yet it has also seen our gentleness, our patience, and our hope. The stars do not measure our success in wealth or technology. They reflect something simpler: our capacity for wonder. And perhaps that is why the stars never grow old to us. Their beauty is not in their distance, but in their constancy. They remind us of what endures when everything else shifts. Long after monuments crumble and words are forgotten, the same constellations still cross the sky, repeating the pattern of eternity. They are reminders that time itself moves within order, and order within peace. Every night sky carries traces of those who came before. When you look up, you are looking at their light, the same photons that touched the eyes of those who built temples, sailed seas, and stood on rooftops centuries ago. That light has traveled through time to reach you. In it, there is both history and comfort, both memory and renewal. In many ways, this is where astronomy becomes something more than science. It becomes reflectioner, quiet practice that connects us to both creation and ourselves. The stars are no longer distant. They are reminders that the same hand that set them in place also shaped our lives with care and precision. In that thought, even the vastness of space feels close, like an embrace that never ends. So much of life urges us to look forward, to chase what is next. But the sky invites us to look upward, to remember, to breathe, to rest. It offers perspective, not pressure. It asks for nothing but stillness. And in that stillness, we find meaning. Every quiet observation, every slow breath beneath the stars, becomes an act of peace in a restless world. To study the heavens today is to continue a tradition that began in the silence of the ancient world. It is to honor the patience of those who first noticed that the stars returned in their proper places, night after night. Their work, carved in stone and inked on parchment, continues in every chart and telescope we use now. Humanity's oldest form of faith was not in fortunate, was in the reliability of the night sky. Even the faintest star, seen from the darkest place, carries a message of constancy. It tells us that light endures, that structure holds, that no motion is without purpose. This truth is not new, it is eternal, written in the rhythm of the universe and reflected in the quiet strength of those who took the time to see it. The more we learn, the more we are reminded of how much remains beyond our reach. And perhaps that is what keeps us looking upward. Not everything must be understood to be appreciated. Some things exist simply to be seen, to remind us that knowledge without humility is incomplete. The stars teach us balance between reason and wonder, between inquiry and awe. As the night deepens and the air cools, the stars begin their slow drift westward. The same motion that has turned the heavens since time began continues, gentle and certain. It does not hurry, it does not tire. It simply moves with grace, a perfect reflection of patience. And beneath it, we find our own rhythm again, slower, calmer, and aligned once more with the steady heart of creation. Even in our smallest acts of attention, we carry forward this legacy of observation. Every glance at the moon, every pause to notice a sunset, every quiet moment beneath the stars, they all add to the long human story of looking upward. In these moments, we are part of something vast and enduring, a conversation between earth and heaven that never truly ends. And maybe that is the secret the sky has been whispering since the beginning, that in paying attention we find peace. In patience we find meaning, and in wonder we find gratitude. The same truths that guided ancient astronomers can still guide us tonight, if only we slow down long enough to listen. So as you rest now, let your thoughts drift upward. Imagine the stars shining quietly above the world, their light falling softly across oceans, mountains, and cities. Know that every beam of light has traveled through time to reach this very moment, and that within its glow is the comfort of order and calm. You are part of that same creation, steady and cared for, beneath the same eternal sky. The night is long, but peaceful. The stars are distant, yet familiar. And as you listen to this story fade, perhaps you feel a little closer to that quiet rhythm that has always guided humanity, the slow, certain pulse of the heavens. It has been there since the beginning, and it will be there tomorrow, waiting to remind you once again that peace often begins with simply looking up. If you've enjoyed this quiet journey through history, I invite you to subscribe and return next time. There's always another forgotten story waiting for you, another path through time to walk slowly together. Your curiosity keeps these gentle echoes of the past alive. And in our next episode, we'll leave the stars behind and step into a very different world, the candlelit homes and bustling kitchens of Tudor England. Together, we'll discover what were the everyday tasks of a Tudor woman, a softer, humbler side of history, filled with rhythm, care, and the quiet labor that shaped an era. Until then, may your night be calm, your thoughts gentle, and your dreams guided by the same quiet order that lights the sky. Sleep well, traveler of history.